East Linden Elementary School. We're going to see what kind of math is involved in planning and preparing for gardens. Come on, let's go inside. So, look what I found. A nice little bag of Beet Detroit Supreme seeds. So when we're thinking about planting gardens, we have to have a plan on where we're getting started. And that plan first involves what kind of seeds are we going to need for planting. Now the cost of this bag of seeds is $2.79. But take a look here. Today, there's a savings of 25% off. So calculating that discount, that is math. And then some other specs that are included in planting and preparing for your garden is they need to be harvested. It takes at least 60 to 65 days for that harvest time. So the depth, in other words, how deep are you going to plant those seeds? That's part of measuring. You need to make sure the depth is at least 1/2 an inch deep into the soil before you begin to plant those seeds. Let's see what else we can find here in terms of math at the nursery. Again, we're here today at Oakland Nursery with some East Linden Summer Experience students. And here I have with me is
Zadaya
and
Sayana.
And they're gonna help me do something called subotising. Now I've got a really pretty plant to show you, and I want you to look at the plant and tell me how many blooms you see. You ready?
Yeah.
This one.
3.
3? How did you know it was 3?
Because I was looking with my eyes.
Yes. You didn't have to count, you just knew, right? Now we are still gonna count so we can confirm that there are 3. Let's count together. That's 1, 2, 3. So that's 3. Great job. Give me a high five. Yes. So if you're thinking about planting your own garden, remember there are a few simple math concepts that are wrapped up in gardening, like measurement, time, the size and shape of your garden, the square footage that garden is going to cover. Perhaps a visit to Oakland Nursery will inspire you to want to create your own garden. As always, thank you for joining us today with Math Everywhere. And as always, math is everywhere.
I can say it's truly magical. They love the taste of fresh produce just from the plant. Some of my students don't even know where some food comes from the grocery stores, so they learn so many things when they garden.
So they really want to be a part of it. Some of them at first, they're really excited about it, but then there are others that say, I really want to know a little bit more about this, so it's more than just looking and glancing at it. It's like, how can I be a part of this? Because I've seen it go from being just a seed, and now it's growing, and I want to be a part of that process.
So they really take care of everything and do it all and know how to do it all, and they have a lot of pride in that.
Greetings and welcome to this week's highlights from across the district. On Tuesday, June 1st, Woodcrest Elementary School celebrated its youngest learners during pre-K promotion and kindergarten graduation ceremonies. Students were recognized for completing important early learning milestones and preparing for their next step in their educational journey. The celebration continued on Wednesday, June 2nd, as Woodcrest honored its 5th grade students during a promotion ceremony marking their transition to middle school. Congratulations to Woodcrest students, families, and staff We can't wait to see our Woodcrest Scholars back in session this summer with grades 1 through 5 returning July 23rd and pre-K and kindergarten returning on July 28th. Recently, career technical education teachers from across Columbus City Schools and classroom teachers from the academies at Beechcroft, East, Walnut Ridge, and West High School participated in the 5th annual STEAM Rising Experience. In partnership with The Ohio State University, STEAM Rising gives educators an opportunity to explore science, technology, engineering, arts, math, and medicine pathways through the lens of a post-secondary learner. Teachers participated in hands-on learning experiences focused on entrepreneurship, marketing, engineering, manufacturing, and logistics while exploring classroom connections that can be brought back to students. The 2-day experience also allowed CCS educators to collaborate with OSU partners and rising sophomores, strengthening the connection between classroom learning, career pathways, and real-world opportunities. On Wednesday, June 3rd, Columbus City Schools hosted Career Tech Forward 2026 at the Ohio Union, bringing together industry partners and public, charter, and non-public school districts to advance the future of career and technical education in the Columbus region. This year's conference highlighted innovative programs, strategic partnerships, and career-connected learning experiences that are helping prepare students for the region's growing workforce needs. The event included a keynote from Rochelle Pride, Franklin County Chief of Economic Development and Innovation, a student conversation on workforce development, and a spotlight on the CODA CCS Student Trainers Initiative before participants moved into breakout sessions. Events like the Career Tech Forward Conference reflect the district's continued commitment to expanding high-quality pathways that connect students to college, careers, and real-world opportunities. On Monday, June 8th, and Tuesday, June 9th, Columbus City Schools welcome education leaders from across the country to the 5th annual Leading for Student Success Institute at the Ohio Union. Hosted by The Ohio State University in partnership with Columbus City Schools and the Wallace Foundation, the 2-day event featured keynote speakers, workshops, panel discussions, and collaborative learning opportunities focused on strengthening school leadership and improving student outcomes. The Institute centered on student success as both a leadership process and an outcome, allowing school-based and non-school-based leaders to explore best practices, share lessons learned, and collaborate on strategies that support every school, every leader, and every student. Together, the 2-day experience highlighted the importance of partnership, collaboration, and strong leadership in creating meaningful support for our schools and the communities they serve. And finally, I am so proud to celebrate our CCS track and field athletes. They went to state and came back winners. Congratulations to all the athletes who earned their spots at the state championships. Also, congratulations to Isaiah Smith, who won first place in Division II Girls 300-meter hurdles. Special congratulations go out to Brittany Douglas, who won the Division III Girls 300-meter hurdles. And Nehemiah Mills, he placed first place in the Division II Boys 400-meter dash and set the new state record. He had the fastest time across all divisions as a junior. Congratulations to all of our athletes. We are CCS proud of you. These have been your highlights from around the district for June 16th. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. We made it to the end. The regular business meeting of the Columbus City School Board of Education for Tuesday, June 16th, 2026 is now called to order. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adair.
Present.
Dr. Pierce is online. Dr. Kennedy.
Present.
Mr. Simmons.
Present.
Mr. Katzenmayer.
Present.
Vice President Ingalls.
Present.
President Dr. Miranda.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Okay. Please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Tonight's meeting will cover a variety of topics. Board committee updates will be presented along with an update from a recent board conference. The board will also provide an update regarding voucher litigation. We will review and discuss several key policies. There will also be an update on the high school transportation work group, along with an update on the school realignment. We have public hearing notices regarding the reemployment of retired employees. Finally, the board will vote on the proposed consent agenda, which includes various items ranging from 9.1 to 24.6 and other legislative items. After the vote, the board will move into an executive session before adjourning for the evening. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved. Second.
Thank you. And second? Hearing no objections, the agenda is adopted. Please call the roll.
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Vice President Ingles?
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I would now like to provide an update on the Columbus City Council, Columbus Board of Education Joint Committee. Supporting students takes all of us. On Monday, June 15th, Columbus City Schools and Columbus City Council came together for our first joint committee hearing. The new Columbus City Council, Columbus City Schools Joint Committee is a formal partnership between the Columbus Board of Education and Columbus City Council. The purpose of the committee is to strengthen collaboration around issues that affect both the city and the Columbus City Schools, particularly in areas where local government and public education share responsibility for supporting children, families, and neighborhoods. The committee was established in response to the district's significant financial challenges and a shared interest in identifying opportunities for partnership and advocacy. It should, however, be noted that this is a committee that was voted to be in existence by City Council. Therefore, the committee is part of their structure. The June 15 meeting was the committee's first public hearing and focused on school funding challenges and student and community support. The meeting was primarily informational, and we had the opportunity through the public participation section of the agenda to hear from the community. No formal actions were taken. City Council and Columbus City School Board leadership used the session to establish a foundation for ongoing collaboration, identify shared priorities, and begin discussing how both entities can work together to support students while navigating the district's financial challenges. The committee also heard from Superintendent Chapman on district priorities, from Treasurer Cook on the financial challenges our district and public education as a whole are facing. We heard a presentation from the Cincinnati's Community Learning Center Institute about building educational, cultural, and civic partnerships that help improve learning conditions for students, and a presentation highlighting all the ways the city and district are already partnering. When the district, City Council, the Board of Education, and community come together in partnership, we are better positioned to set priorities, identify solutions, and strengthen support for our students. We look forward to continuing this work together and keeping students at the center of every conversation. Our next joint committee meeting is tentatively scheduled for September 8th, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. at a place to be determined. And as we move into summer break, I'll be asking the board to come together for a retreat regarding our governance model. Our professional service agreement with the Council of Great City Schools will provide coaching services, and the coach has strongly recommended that the full board participate in the training. We will receive a roster of those who have participated previously in the training. Okay, a point of personal privilege. Continuing with Dr. Chapman, we want to take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate the incredible achievements of our student athletes who competed in the recent state championship track meets. Your hard work, dedication, and perseverance have truly paid off, and you have made your schools and communities proud. I think we have one of the athletes here. She might come up with her family. Beechcroft High School, third place girls 100-meter dash, Celeste Hutchinson. Yes, thank you. Sixth place boys 100-meter dash, Nehemiah Mills. Third place girls 100-meter hurdles, Brittany Douglas. Fourth place girls 200-meter dash, Celeste Hutchinson again. Seventh place boys 200-meter dash, Nehemiah Mills. First place girls 300-meter hurdles, Brittany Douglas. And first place boys 400-meter dash, state record, Nehemiah Mills. Eastmore Academy, sixth place boys 200-meter dash, Donovan Delph. Seventh place boys 600-meter relay, Willie Poindexter, Jaden Turner, Dejon West, and Yuri West. And third place boys long jump, Donovan Delph. South High School, first place girls 300 hurdles, Azia Smith. Walnut Ridge High School, 10th place boys shot put, Abron Davis. At Whetstone Girls High School, 14th place girls shot put, Michelle Pierce. Each of you has showcased remarkable talent and sportsmanship, proving that hard work and determination can lead to exceptional results. Whether you're setting records, earning medals, or simply competing with your best, you have represented your school with great honors. We do have something for you, and we will take pictures. Celeste has 2 of these.
Did you want to say something? No? I would like to, I know your coach puts a lot of effort into not just what you all do on the track field, but also you all being good students of character and integrity. And so on behalf of our Beechcroft alumni, as well as our board and staff, I want to just uplift the people that are feeding into you all, that are supporting you all, that are there to help you and your parents and grandparents do the great things that you all are doing. So thank you all so much. Are we all taking a picture?
Yeah, we're all good.
What year are you? Oh, you just graduated. Okay, I was going to say you could set a record. Are you gonna run into college? Where are you going? Oh, awesome. That's wonderful. Yeah. Oh, this is school.
It's always a fun part.
Yeah. The highlight of the evening.
I would agree. I would agree.
Ready, Jennifer? Oh, maybe not. All right, we have no public comment this evening, so I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer Adair, Katzenmeyer, and Ingalls to provide an update on board committee updates. So, want to go first on your committee?
Me? Okay.
Yeah. Miss Adair.
Okay, yes, the Academic and Facility Alignment Committee met on June 10th. We continued our discussion about the layers, which we are going to more formally bring to the board when we give our report, when we answer your questions, which we are asking for a little bit of an extension on because we have a survey out right now and it already has 1,500 responses. But in looking at that data, we realized we needed more students. So we would like a little bit of an extension of time and bring back a report answering the 3 questions in August. So we just have more time to look at that data. But we continued our work on the learning about the layers, and we really started to learn more about academic return on investment. So Treasurer Cook made a presentation to the committee about that, how we're going to start using those, looking at student outcomes versus the inputs that we're putting in, which includes financial but also different resources. And the team is categorizing some of that now, and that is also going to be part of the report that we will bring back in August. As a practice, we started to look at some of our programs, and one of those that we started looking at were our gender schools, so our Columbus Prep School for the boys and Columbus City Prep School for the girls. Part of what we have to do as a community as a whole is understand above our mandatory requirements, the optional services, and I'm going to call them that right now because they aren't mandatory by any state, federal law. We have to decide what our community would like us to have in our education specifications as mandatory for our community and what won't be there. And so we have to go through this exercise through many programs, many services that we offer, and we're going to use the lens of academic return on investment with that. So this was a practice. We were working with the team to figure out how these presentations should work, what kind of data we wanted to look at. So we did look at those two schools in particular, and you can see the presentations of the type of data and information that was shared. So this will be a continued thing that we do. We're going to bring in the ETRM committee because they have part of that conversation as well. And eventually what will happen is we will layer all of our programs to determine which ones our community says are part of our mandatory package, and then those will get put into the ed specifications, which will be delivered end of year, maybe beginning of next year. So it's a process, and we're excited about it. And it's as Treasurer Cook said, while this idea around academic return on investment has been out there, and Dr. Rosa from Georgetown has been training all over the country, no school district has really implemented it. So we're hopeful that we can be one of the first in the country to really look at it, get it down, and be a model, especially in urban education. And so we're really hopeful that Dr. Rosa will come in the fall and help us work on that as well. So I know we were supposed to do our big report today, but we're asking for a little bit of an extension, board leadership, because we did get a lot of data that we need to go in, and we saw some gaps in the data.
Yeah, I think that would be fine. In August, I have been watching the meetings, and I think you are making progress, and particularly in terms of the data that you're collecting. And I think the survey, getting student input, is going to be really important, and some of the information that we'll want to see. So, all right, any questions for Board Member Adair?
I think I would just add, President Miranda, you shared a very informative research piece with the board members that are on the committee. I would encourage that to be shared with the entire board, because I think that will inform everyone being or having a broader perspective as to why gender-based schools are important and the value that they can add. So thank you for sharing that, and if we could share it with everybody.
I can do that. Yes, Board Member Simmons.
Thank you, President Dr. Miranda. I do want to say I did have a chance to review the gender school presentation that was prepared for the committee, and I think while test scores are certainly one component of how our schools perform, I don't think they tell the full picture, and so I would have liked to have seen a bit more information. I know the board members on that committee asked, a lot of really good questions from the dialogue that I went back and listened to, and asked for a few more deliverables. But when you look at the two schools' report cards, for example, they start to tell a different story. When you look at their chronic absenteeism rates, they're about the same, which is really curious to me because we know that that has such a big impact on education. And so I just think there's, we have a lot of data that is both quantitative, but also, some of the qualitative things like how are these schools aligning with our portrait of a graduate. So certainly be considered. And so I just want to make sure that as we consider all of our, programs we have, that we're certainly considering the breadth of information we have available to us, not just the top line performance of the school.
And just to chime in on that, the committee did, public members of the committee as well as the board members did lean in on the data with the administration. We thought about different ways to look at it, what we should benchmark, what was missing, what were the gaps. And again, we're learning out loud on this. So there's going to be different ways, and this is part of the dialogue, is to figure out what we are measuring and what types of data we're using. The administration is actually going to be working on internal metrics first to kind of help take a first pass at things So we are learning a lot. So I appreciate your comments, Board Member Simmons. It would be helpful if you could give those to me more in advance, though, so that I can actually incorporate them into our committee work.
No, and that's all right. I didn't expect an answer right away. I just think it's important that as the administration is preparing this information, that the complete picture is taken into consideration. When you see a presentation that kind of reduces the work of our staff and students to just a few metrics, it's a little discouraging, and I think that the feedback from those folks would be consistent to that.
Thank you. Board Member Katzenmeier.
All right, so I have an update from the committee, and then following that, a brief request for an amendment to the charter from the board. So I'll explain that in a second. So our last committee meeting was on May 20th, and the next one is actually on Thursday. So this is kind of a late report, but we have the next meeting in 2 days. We received a financial presentation from Treasurer Cook regarding potential future funding mechanisms for the for new construction and capital improvements, including the use of permanent improvement levy revenues and certificates of participation. So we're looking into that more and hope to make a recommendation relatively soon to enter into, kind of one of these agreements to figure out how to move forward, along with what Board Member Adair was saying with regard to the Facilities Committee, Academics and Facilities Committee. We also received a presentation from Chief Operating Officer Maurice Woods regarding the district procurement thresholds and purchasing authority. We currently have the lowest purchasing authority in the state, it appears, out of all the districts. So wanted to discuss that. There's also, the other side of that is there's some reasons why some smaller contracts need board approval. So we're kind of looking into both sides of that. We received an update from committee member Martin Davis regarding a kind of data gathering for facility planning effort that he's undertaken. And we engaged in a discussion regarding the Everett School and Duxbury School properties and the difficulties of moving these programs and, the potential ramifications of removing them from the closure list. So we're continuing a number of these discussions and look forward on Thursday to having a presentation from the Safe Green Schools folks about the policy that you guys enacted last year and how that's going. So we're moving along. Any questions there before I get to this charter amendment? Okay. So the committee reviewed, so the Equitable and Transparent Resource Management Committee reviewed its governance charter and identified a discrepancy between the charter and board policy 0155, which creates the charter. The charter specifically requires no fewer than 4 volunteer community members. Board policy 0155 requires at least 2 non-elected community members. We have 3. We may get to 4 eventually, but wanted to continue our work and kind of going to what the board policy is, which supersedes the charter rules, will allow us to do that. So the recommendation was approved by the committee on a vote of 5-0. So at this time, on behalf of the Equitable and Transparent Resource Management Committee, I move that the Board of Education approve the proposed amendment to the ETRM committee charter as presented, which you guys should have in a memorandum here.
Second.
Okay, now it's open for discussion.
We're wrong. There's a motion second. It's recognized.
Or discussion. So are we referring to the amendment recommendation that's in board docs?
Yes.
And the recommendation is to change that charter number under no fewer than 4 members
Correct.
to no fewer than 2.
No, to more than 2. Or
So right now, the revised language that I'm looking at says no fewer than 2 additional volunteer members. That's the revised language.
yes, that's correct. So at least. Which means at least 2. When building the committee, we interviewed a number of people, found 3 that were great for the role, and we're looking at the committee language. So this allows us to continue moving forward with this, and I feel like we're in a great place there.
Okay, so I'm trying to process this, so I'm just asking this question, and it might not be worded properly. But help me understand. Walk me through this. Slow walk me through this. What it sounds like is you currently have 3, but because the charter says 4, you want to change the charter language to say 2, instead of opening up the application and recruiting an additional member?
Not, except for the last part, yes. I think we'll eventually have more members on here, but we have our committee tomorrow. We have potential votes on there. We want to continue to move forward, and this would allow us to do that. I also think we have great representation on the committee, and I'm not really, I don't think we're shorting anything by doing this.
No, but the sense of urgency would be that you don't have quorum, maybe? Is that what it,
No,
do you not have quorum?
No,
Like,
we have quorum.
What's the sense of urgency to change the charter?
Board Member Adair is going to.
Yeah, so I know this is weird. It took me a minute too. So remember that these committees and this committee structure is fairly new, right? And so our policies lay out the number 2, just as was said. And so technically, every year that we seat a committee, because they're only technically yearly, the president appoints them, and when a new president comes on, that's every year. The committee charters should be updated, so they shouldn't really carry forward. So the policies are always going to govern over the charters themselves. I think, though, that the reason we added numbers to these charters when we first did it was because that board at the time really wanted to have and ensure a certain number and a certain amount of community engagement. In fact, we did, if you remember, we did a whole different application process where we had, it was over 50, 60 people apply to be on the committees. But technically, the charters don't outlive the year. So it should revert back to 2 unless there is a change and we decide as a board that for some reason we want to go above the required number per our policy. So right now there's 3, so there is above 2. And I always think that it's good to have more people. And in fact, our committee that you're on with me, we want more people too. We didn't fill all of our seats either. But I also think that we need to figure out as a board the actual process that people will apply to be on the committees and what the minimum qualifications are going to be. So I do think that is a way that we need to continue this dialogue around committees and how we get people. But I don't think it's fair to characterize it that this committee is doing something wrong or proposing something wrong when it's following what the actual board policies are.
Let me clarify. I didn't say that the committee was doing something wrong. I simply posed the question of, do we need to open it up to recruit an additional member? Wrong did not come out of my mouth, so please clarify. But I think Board Member Simmons wanted to
But you
add
said
something.
at the beginning that
I said, help me understand, walk me through this. Help me, slow walk me through this, explain this to me, right? What's the sense of urgency from 4 to 2?
I would say there's no sense of urgency except that we have been prevented on voting on items thus far, and we have another meeting tomorrow because of this.
Now I'm confused again because I said, does it affect quorum? And you said no.
It's not quorum, it's the lack of.
Sorry, we actually decided we did vote last meeting because we discussed it, that it reverts back to the board policy. So board policy says 2, and since this charter has not been readopted, because it hasn't, this is the first time the board has approved it for this calendar year. The change, he's making the change back to 2 to be consistent with policy. So really, this charter hasn't been approved.
I have another question, but you can go to him.
Board Member Simmons.
Thank you. Colleagues, in our policy, when it says 2 committee members, I believe I'm aware in our policy where it says we have to have 2 board members, but then we have language in our charter that talks about community members from a cross section. And so I'm not sure, I'm kind of confused. You know, I'm fine with making this change because the reason it came up, Dr. Pierce, in committee is because, you know, when we first met for the first time in the year, we wanted to approve our calendar. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I reviewed our charter and I said, well, hey, we don't have enough members appointed to the committee. Okay. We did have enough members present showing up of those who we had appointed, which is why quorum has not been an obstacle. But because we had not had the appropriate members of community committee members, you know, I did not feel, and the committee agreed at the time, that we should approve the calendar. We should, you know, let's get our charter in good order. And that was consistent. When we first did these committees, there was a really big hullabaloo about how we had to have these charters, and they meant a lot, at least 2 years ago, and then now they seem to not mean as much. But, you know, when we first set these up, there was a really big hullabaloo over it. And so, you know, I said, well, let's get our charter correct first, and then, you know, Chair Katzenmeier did that. You know, at the next meeting, I wasn't able to attend. And so this was the result of the committee saying we would still like to conduct business even though we're short 1 member. I'm not exactly sure why 2 instead of 3 was decided, but that's where we landed. Although I do want to just get clarification that in our policy, the reason, you know, we have board policy that says 2 board members on a committee. If we do have board policy that requires 2 community members on a committee, I'm not sure where that is in our policy, so if we could get that pointed to, that'd be helpful. And I also want to communicate that the reason it's 2 board members and not 3 is because the board was in a very unique set of circumstances at a time where we just did not have the full Board of Education in position to serve on the committees. And perhaps we should have considered suspending the policy instead of permanently altering it, but I would even say we probably should go back to having 3 board members on all the committees. And I think, you know, President Miranda has made sure we do, but, you know, maybe we should put that in our policy. And so, yes, it's 2 board members in the policy. I don't believe it's 2 community members if we get that verified, and perhaps we should consider going back to 3 board members in the policy.
Just for, it's policy 0155. And it says the committees shall be comprised of at least 2 non-elected members who have subject area expertise appointed by the president of the Columbus City Schools Board of Education.
Thank you, colleague. I wasn't aware of that language. What policy is that? You said, I know you mentioned, I just didn't quite hear it.
0155.
Thank you.
Also, Board Member Peter, just a little context. So, you know, kind of behind the scenes, we interviewed a number of folks, selected 3 of them. Reached out to a couple more who didn't end up, for whatever reason, were not able to join or it didn't make sense. So we're continuing to grow the committee. We were just trying to cross the T's and dot the I's to make sure if there was any question about whether we could continue to vote or continue committee business, we're aligning it with what was already in the policy.
Yes.
Thank you, President Miranda. So it sounds like the board policy that we have for the committees to supersede the language in the charter, so I'm fine with the change of language. But I think the bigger issue, and I'm observing this in all of our committee participation, is that we do not have solid community participation on our committees. I've requested through a number of channels that we reopen our committee application, that we promote it throughout the community so we can get solid community participation. Right now, we are having pretty much the board and administrators meet for these committee meetings. And this is really an avenue in which our community members can have a voice and a seat at the table. And so I think, colleagues, it is upon us, while we are crossing T's and dotting I's, to make sure that we are recruiting individuals to serve on our committees, that we are very clear on how long that service will be and what that service will entail.
Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So, motion and a second.
Yes, the motion.
There's a motion and a second.
Dr. Miranda?
Yep, there's somebody
Oh,
seconded. Yes.
I did, yeah.
I did request at the ETRM first committee meeting that we get the terms of the members up on our website, because the public should be able to, the same way our board member terms are up there, the public should be able to look at the committees and see, hey, John Smith, their term expires this date. And so if we could please, just to echo Dr. Pierce, I appreciate you asking for that, because if we could please get the terms uploaded to the website.
I think that would be, I echo that request, because I think it also will show other community members who's currently on the committees, and that might spark some interest as well. And then I know one of our colleagues has mentioned it. I know I've mentioned it a couple of times, but if there are ways that we could also have student participation, we do have Zoom, we have, the internet now, and we can devise ways where maybe they just come to one meeting a quarter, but we can also look for ways to incorporate student voice. I know Board Member Adair, we've discussed that on the committee, especially as we've been looking at our programs, making sure that we have student voice. And so if board leadership could also include that in the discussions and the thought process, that would be greatly appreciated.
We'll do that. Okay, there's no other discussion, then we'll call the roll.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Vice President Ingalls,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda.
Yes,
Motion carried.
and we will look into all of those things and see what we can do. So stay tuned for August. All right, Vice President Ingalls.
All right. So our policy and governance meeting, our last meeting, was held on May 21st. Many of the policies that we actually passed as a committee have come before this board, and 3 of them are before the board for consideration tonight. There were a number that were before the board last board meeting that we discussed. We had a presentation about educational options, and we also had a presentation about attendance. So the attendance policy we talked about last board meeting, and we had a presentation there. We had a number of different transportation-related policies, some of which will be retaken up today, and then some of which we handled last board meeting. I do want to call out that a lot of our policies actually have work groups that are working behind the scenes. And those work groups, the committee has made sure to insist that the administration include all relevant parties and all relevant stakeholders, including students. And so a number of the work groups that have worked on these policies do include a number of students. I would say since our March meeting, we have had, since the beginning of this year, so since January, we have, as a board, adopted 22 policies, and that's a significant number compared to years past. So I just want to give considerable shout out to our legal team and our policy support team, because that is it sounds like it's maybe a small number to some, but that is a massive lift, especially when you consider a couple of these policies were very, very, very intensive and took a lot of work, especially the AI policy, which was new for the district and required a lot of feedback, a lot of stakeholder engagement, and a number of committee meetings to not only discuss language, but discuss concerns behind them. So from the last meeting, all of the policies have come before the board, except for we are still working on and thinking about the VCAP and APEX question, and we have a work group currently established who is working on that topic, and will make a presentation to the board or to the committee at the next Policy and Governance Committee meeting. We also discussed the parental status of students. Board, you may recall, or at least the ones who were here last spring, that we took that up for a first read, and the board decided to take no action because there were a number of questions, or the board just wasn't ready to adopt in reviewing that meeting. In looking at the language of the policy, we decided as a policy team that there are probably lots of things missing from that policy, and we could use some considerable community feedback to think through some of those things more deeply. And so I explicitly asked our committee members to engage their networks and engage their community around the language of that policy and come prepared with a number of ideas of what are we missing to support our students who are nursing, our students and staff who are nursing. And we had a very robust discussion in that meeting. And so I thought it was very fruitful. There's a lot of things that were kind of instructed to go back to the policy team for consideration and to rewrite the language and bring it back to us. But a lot of really good input and thought. And so thank you to our community members who took that charge and really thought critically about the policy and how, not only how we can make it more inclusive, but make sure that we are affording our students and also thinking about how we can afford our staff ample opportunity and treat them considerably well per policy. So that is something that we are going to take up at our next meeting, is rediscussing that. We've got a number of different policies that we have kind of in the queue of things that we need to look at. As we know, state law passes all the time and quickly, and this last week is an indication of exactly how that can happen as bills get folded into other bills and suddenly one bill has 7 new requirements on school systems. And that's just one piece of legislation on a day where you can have 25. So that has happened at the legislature. They're on a break. And so now we as a team are kind of looking through some of that and determining what is it that is required by law to change quickly. And then also looking back at our policies, because we have a number of different policies that have either not been updated in a number of years or have not been updated since they were initially adopted. And so we're kind of piecemealing and working through those as a team in bite-sized chunks and trying to do that in a way that makes sense and also kind of prioritizes those most pressing and those most urgent issues to make sure that we are in compliance. So it was a good meeting overall, and this board has already seen a lot of the fruits of that labor.
Thank you. Vice President Ingalls and I will just do a brief update. We attended the OSBA Leadership Conference. We were both able to go on Saturday. And I'll just briefly, just one of the sessions that I went to that made an impression on me was from Pickerington City Schools, and it was about giving students voice. And I was thinking about our Superintendent's Ambassador program and thought that we already have an organization, and I don't know how much we use them, but I was thinking about how we could use them to get input and hear their voice, but also from other students. So it was pretty impressive. The students spoke about things that they came up with, how they were able to give ideas. And so again, it just made me think about how we can continue to give student voice, and whether it's through the survey, as you talked about, or whether how Dr. Pierce talked about, is making sure that we hear the voices of students as we continue to do the work here in the district. So, Vice President Ingalls.
Yeah, so President Miranda and I kind of decided to divide and conquer in the forums, and we picked out 4, and we each went and split them up, and then, you know, the big session halls, we were kind of all together. But one that I'll call out quickly is there was a legal update, and so I went to that just to kind of hear if there was anything, you know, that might trigger a need for our board to respond or operate differently. And I can say that I feel very confident that everything that they were instructing, we're pretty much following. So I feel very good about that one. I did ask for that presentation. I have not yet received it from OSBA, but if I do, I'm happy to share that with my fellow board members and administration. And then there was a presentation about America 250, because July 4th, 2026 is the 250th anniversary of the nation. And there is a nationwide effort to engage all 350 million Americans into our nation's 250th anniversary. It's known as the semi-quincentennial. It's quite a mouthful. But there is a cohort that is leading that charge, and I know one of the people is Representative Joe Miller, and another being a teacher, an educator actually out of the Washington Courthouse School District, and he was there to present about how schools can engage students in America 250 and how boards of education might be able to uplift some of the celebrations that are happening. A lot of what he talked about was ways that he engages his students in veterans-initiated projects and the research projects that he does down in the Washington Courthouse and Miami Tree School Districts. They have done a lot of research around unmarked grave sites and helping veterans and their families reattach to some of these unmarked graves from numbers of years past. And so talked about that project. He talked about different ways that we can kind of teach American culture and history and all of the things. And obviously our culture and our history is one that is very diverse. It is both very uplifting and it can be very traumatic in learning. And I think that we see a lot of that in our district, but that is an opportunity as well coming back for some of our, social studies area educators to really talk with kids when they come back from the summer to talk about the 250 celebrations and really lean into learning that history. So it was an interesting presentation. And I think it also kind of made me think about like different ways that we as board members, just like through our own networks and community outreach, can do a good job of uplifting this national celebration around our country's history.
Thank you. All right, I will turn it over to Board Member Adair, who will give the voucher litigation update.
Thank you so much. I wanted to provide a brief update on the status of the EdChoice voucher litigation, in which Columbus City Schools serves as the lead plaintiff, alongside a coalition of public schools and other organizations across Ohio. This lawsuit was filed because of the significant concerns regarding the dramatic expansion of Ohio's voucher program and the impact that that expansion has on the state's constitutional obligation to maintain a thorough and effective system of common schools. That's actually the language in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. At its core, this case asks a fundamental question. Can the state continue to expand funding for private education without first ensuring that it has met its constitutional responsibilities to adequately support the public schools that educate the vast majority of Ohio's children? This case is not about opposing parents or families who make different choices educationally for their children. Families will always make choices they believe are in the best interest of their individual student. Rather, this case focuses on the state's obligation under the Constitution and whether the current funding system appropriately prioritizes and sustains public education. As many in our community know, public schools serve every child who walks through our doors. We educate students with a wide range of needs and circumstances, and we are responsible for ensuring that all students have access to high-quality public education, regardless of their background, ability, or income. So most recently, the case was before the 10th District Court of Appeals for oral argument. That means it's an appeal from the trial-level court. During that hearing, the court heard arguments from both sides and asked questions about the significant constitutional issues presented. The appeals court will now consider those arguments and issue a written decision. There is no specific timeline for when that decision will be released. Given the importance of the issues involved and the broad impact this decision may have on public education throughout Ohio, it is expected that litigation will continue through additional appeals, potentially to the Ohio Supreme Court. We will continue to keep our community informed as the case progresses. This litigation is about protecting Ohio's constitutional commitment to public education and ensuring that every child has access to strong, stable, and adequately supported public school systems. Thank you.
Okay, moving on, Vice President Ingalls will talk about 3 board policies.
Yay. Okay, so Mr. Rodney Stufflebean and Attorney Mr. Barnes, would you mind coming to the podium? So our last board meeting, we had these on the agenda, but we, as a board, decided that there was some work and questions that we had around some of the language in the policies. And so I know our attorney, Mr. Barnes, has been working with board members to answer some of those questions, and through that had suggested some additional language into the policies. So board members, we will take, I want to make sure I'm going in the right order, 8640, which is transportation for non-routine trips. This is a complete replacement, again, because there have been 4 different revisions since 2015 from Neola, from our policy provider. And in order to adapt all the changes and language and yada yada, we just basically had to rewrite the policy to make sure that it was easier and cleaner to read. And so kind of reminding folks, there's language in here about multi-function school activity buses, and those are school buses that do not have the standard safety equipment that our typical day-to-day buses apply. So that's what that's talking about. That's all that's talking about. And non-routine trips, I know last board meeting we had some questions about like what is a non-routine trip and what does it entail and what does it not entail. So there is some additional language. You'll see that highlighted in green in the back, and then there's a strike through of some language. But I will go ahead and turn it over to our team to kind of explain where we landed with the language and any recommendations moving forward, and ask any questions if the board has them.
Yes, as Vice President Ingalls indicated, there are 3 transportation policies that were before the board at the last meeting and were tabled to this meeting. I will be talking about policy numbers 8640 and 8651, and Mr. Stubblebean will talk about policy number 8650. There was some heavy discussion at the last meeting surrounding certain language in 8640 regarding the superintendent's discretionary authority to enter into contracts with government entities and nonprofit organizations. So what we, in speaking with the board members who had some concerns, we have added language to the last paragraph of that policy. And that entire paragraph relates to the superintendent's discretionary authority. That language added is any contract with an agency of the federal government for the use or operation of board-owned vehicles, including but not limited to buses, shall require prior approval of the Board of Education. So it carves out the federal government from local and state government. There was also some discussion regarding students' ability to drive personal cars during non-routine trips. And language was added to the last sentence of the first page. That language is, an exception may be made by the principal on an individual basis, provided the student's parents provide written authorization and a release from liability, and the student does not transport any other student unless the parents of the student being transported have also provided written authorization and a release from liability. In addition, the parents of the approved student driver must provide written authorization for the student to transport others and a release from liability. So no language was taken away, but language was added. For convenience purposes, I'll go directly into policy 8651, which had the same concern as 8640 regarding the superintendent's discretionary authority. So the same language was added to that policy. It's not on the last page, but it's on the first page under B, use of buses by authorized entities during emergencies. The same language was added. And now I will turn it over to Mr. Stufflebean for 8650.
Thank you, sir. You need to vote for that one, or do you want me to go ahead and go
We'll
straight
just
into
call in the order of the
Okay.
board docs after you guys kind of talk about the three.
Absolutely. Policy 8650 is transportation by alternative vehicle. This is a complete replacement, and policy scope on this addresses the transportation of students by alternative vehicles and formally defines what qualifies as an alternative vehicle for district purposes. It establishes minimum driver requirements for alternative vehicle operators. The purpose and rationale is the prior policy used outdated school van language that no longer reflects the range of vehicles in district use. A full replacement was warranted to establish a clear current definition and consistent standards for drivers. Some of the key changes are alternative vehicle formally defined as any passenger vehicle originally designed and constructed for 9 or fewer passengers, not to include the driver. All references to school van are replaced with alternative vehicle, and the minimum driver requirements are as described for all alternative vehicles and the operators. Those are the synopsises of the changes, and it'll bring us in line with the statute as it stands today.
Seeing no discussion or questions.
I actually have a question. It's not actually, I'm fine with all the things that you just presented. It's actually a question, it's totally different. When you were reading the language, you said parent. And I just wonder, do we do parent or guardian now in our policies? Is it both? Or is parent also defined as guardian somewhere else in our policy? Should it say parent or guardian?
Generally, it would be parent/guardian, so yes.
Are you referring
We
to
can
policy
add that.
We could revise that.
Yes.
Yeah, if 8640, where the new language that was inserted, it just says students' parents, and it's several places in here, parents.
So
Yes,
that
we can-
language was literally taken from the old policy, and so that probably does need to be reflected, that it's parent or guardian.
Okay, so that's on 8640.
8640.
And it's just 8640, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
There's also other places now that I'm glancing through this where places you didn't touch yet. So I would just say anywhere that there is parent, if it could be parent / guardian.
Yeah.
When we go to put this in final.
I think that's right.
Is that only for 8640, or is that for the other policies?
I don't think it's in any of the other policies, but I will make the caveat in each motion. So I will go ahead and make the motion that the board adopt the policy as written in board docs for policy 8640 with additional changes that when it says parent, it should say parent/guardian.
Second.
Vice President Ingles,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Moving on to item 4.5, Board Policy 8650, Transportation by Alternate Vehicles. I do not see parent/guardian, but I also am doing a very quick skim. So I will make the motion that the board adopt the policy as written in board docs with if there is any parent, it should say parent/guardian.
Second.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Vice President Ingles?
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, and moving on to item 4.6, Board Policy 8651, non-routine use of school buses. Again, here I will make the motion that the board adopt the policy as written and upload it into board docs with the caveat that if there is any point where it says parent, it should say parent/guardian.
Second.
Okay.
Mr. Katzenmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Vice President Ingles?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Great, and thank you, board members, for your feedback and work in between the last board meeting.
Thank you, Sarah, for leading us through that. All right. Dr. Chapman, we're going to turn it over to you for several updates.
Yes. Good evening, President Dr. Miranda, Vice President Ingles, board members, staff members who are here with us, and community members who are either here with us in person or online. Welcome. Thank you for the opportunity to provide this update on the high school transportation 9 through 12 work group. The purpose of this work group is to provide further analysis at the board's request of the 2 high school transportation options presented last December. To clarify, this work group did not come up with these 2 options. They have been tasked with providing a deeper analysis of them, and that is the focus for this update tonight. The work group will present its final recommendations to the board no later than January 31, 2027. This work has followed a deliberate, structured process. Following the board's direction in December, the team completed the pre-planning and planning phases and is now actively engaged in analysis. That work includes reviewing student access, travel times, transfers, walking distances, safety conditions, infrastructure needs, operational capacity, potential costs, and the time required to implement any future transportation changes responsibly. It is also important to understand how the 2 options currently being evaluated were developed. On September 11, 2025, the Joint Committee on Community Engagement and Advocacy, Equitable and Transparent Resource Management, and Academic and Facilities voted to advance 2 options for further consideration. Those options were later presented to the full board, which directed the district to analyze both options. The current analysis focuses on 2 transportation options. One that would discontinue yellow bus service for general ed high school students, and another that would combine CODA access with limited yellow bus support based on students' transit needs. You will hear more about both options during tonight's presentation. The work group will continue to evaluate both options and, again to reiterate, has not yet developed a final recommendation. This work has been a strong collaborative effort amongst Columbus City Schools, CODA, the City of Columbus, Columbus City Council, and the Mid-Ohio Regional Planning Commission. Each partner brings essential expertise in student transportation, public transit, infrastructure, safety, citywide mobility, and operational planning. That collective knowledge is necessary as we determine what is practical, sustainable, and most responsive to the needs of our students and families. The team is examining how students would travel to and from school, where infrastructure or safety concerns exist, what improvements may be necessary, what each option would cost, and how much time the district would need to implement any changes responsibly. Tonight's presentation is a progress update on this important work. Again, not a final recommendation or an implementation decision, nor does it require a board vote. At this time, I'd like to welcome our Chief Operating Officer, Maurice Woods, who will provide a more detailed update on the work completed to date. He'll be co-presenting tonight with Rodney Stuffelbein and Aslyn Rodriguez from CODA. Welcome, team.
Thank you, Superintendent Chapman. Good evening, President Dr. Miranda, members of the board, Superintendent Chapman, Treasurer Cook, Auditor O'Connor, and community members. Superintendent mentioned my name is Maurice Woods. I am the Chief Operating Officer. And here with me tonight are Rodney Stufflebeam, our Executive Director of Transportation, and Asleen Rodriguez, our Senior Director of Strategic Partnerships at CODA. On November 18, 2025, the Superintendent presented proposed budget reductions during the board meeting. I said November 18th. Let me correct that if I didn't say that. On December 2nd, the board voted on multiple board resolutions. Specific to the two high school transportation 9 through 12 options presented, the board did not pass the resolutions and directed the superintendent to establish a transportation working group in consultation with CODA and other stakeholders. Next slide, please. Tonight, we are providing an update to the board and community on ongoing school transportation 9 through 12 work group activities. We want to emphasize from the outset, no final decisions have been made. No high school transportation changes are being implemented for the 26-27 school year. And this presentation is intended to provide the board with a progress update on the work currently underway. This is a decision filtered for the work of student focus, sustainability, and safe requirements. Student focus means we are not just looking at a map and assuming that a route works. We have to understand how our students would actually get from home to school, including walking distance, transfers, travel time, and whether the path is reasonable. Safe means we must look at the actual conditions around schools and bus stops. That includes sidewalks, crosswalks, traffic patterns, ADA access, lighting, shelters, and how students would respond if a trip is delayed or disrupted. Sustainability means the district must be clear about cost and capacity. Transportation is already one of the district's largest operating costs, and we cannot continue to design a system around empty capacity. Routing students who do not ride create costs, staffing pressures, and operational complexities. So the goal is not simply to reduce services. The goal is to design a transportation model that matches actual student needs, protects students who require support, and reduces avoidable waste in the system. A plan that saves money but does not work for students is not good enough. A plan that supports students but cannot be staffed or funded is also not sustainable. The recommendation must balance all three. At this point, I would like to introduce Mr. Rodney Stufflebeam, who will take us through the next slide.
Thank you, sir. President Dr. Miranda, Vice President Engel, members of the board, thank you. Back in December, the board asked us to take a serious look at high school transportation, to work alongside CODA, the City of Columbus, MORPC, and other partners. Study the options together and come back with a recommendation for the 27-28 school year. That's the charge we've been carrying ever since. Here's how we've gone about it. Rather than rush to an answer, we built a process. We moved through initiation, then pre-planning, planning, and we're now in the data analysis stage. The full committee meets on a regular basis, and underneath it, 5 subcommittees are doing the hands-on work, digging into the operations and data, safety and security, infrastructure and marketing and communication, and community engagement. Each one owns a piece of the puzzle, and they report back up so nothing gets decided in a vacuum. So where does that leave us right now? We're in the middle of the real work, validating the data, understanding how students would actually get where they need to go, assessing what's safe and what our infrastructure can support, and figuring out what it would genuinely take to make a change like this work for families. I want to be clear about one thing, because I know it's the first question on people's minds. Nothing is changing for high school transportation in the 26-27 school year. This is about building a plan worth your consideration and we'll bring that recommendation back to you in January of 2027. I'll turn it back over to Mr. Woods now.
Thank you, sir. The CCS CODA work group consists of two distinct groups. There's a cross-organizational work group that consists of strategically selected, tactical, operations-focused subject matter experts. They have recurring meetings, they meet monthly and face-to-face. There's an executive advisory group that consists of executives from partnership organizations that meet quarterly to receive updates and provide feedback to the cross-organizational work group. Mr. Stufflebean will take us through a few slides, and then we'll bring up Asleen Rodriguez.
Thank you, sir. Evaluations of options and criteria. There you go. Now that we have walked through what the work group is focused on, how this work group is structured, and the support groups to ensure we successfully complete a final recommendation to you, the board, by January of 2027, I'm going to turn your attention to the options that the team has been analyzing. As Dr. Chapman mentioned during her opening remarks, these two options originated from within the Joint Committee last fall, and on September 11th, 2025, they voted to present these two options to the board. These two options were then brought to the full board on December 2nd, 2025, where the board determined that the two options needed additional planning and evaluation. That is when the charge was given to create a cross-functional work group to assess these two options. This slide provides what the work group has learned thus far. First, let me begin with clarifying that the phrase state minimum requirements describes a compliance baseline. It does not describe the standard the district and this work group is using for the assessment of these two options. Rather than using the state minimum requirements, the work group is evaluating the two options by addressing the following questions. 1, can students get to school safely? 2, can they get there reliably? 3, what are the travel times? 4, what transfers are required? 5, what sidewalks, crosswalks, shelters, and ADA access are needed? 6, what students require exceptions? And 7, and what can the district sustain financially and operationally? With that assessment process now laid out, let's dive into each option previously brought forward. Option number 1, starting with it, to support students in grade 9 through 12, if a decision is made to reduce student transportation to state minimum requirements, would mean that the district ends yellow bus transportation for all CCS and CMP 9 through 12 high school grade students, and does not replace transportation with a CODA pass. Students with IEP transportation needs and CTE shuttle needs would remain covered. Let's look at this line by line. The yellow bus transportation provided. No, yellow bus transportation of CCS and charter non-public students 9 through 12 is not provided. So CODA passes offered. No, CCS will not purchase CODA passes for CCS and CMP students. Who covers the cost of transportation? Families will have the responsibility to transport CCS and CMP 9 through 12 students. Is the state minimum met? In this example, yes. Will there be state noncompliance fines? No, this option eliminates noncompliance fines for grades 9 through 12. The projected cost savings is $7.2 million. Option number 2. To support students in grades 9 through 12, if a decision is made to reduce student transportation to state minimum requirements, would also end broad yellow bus service for high school students, but adds CODA passes and limited yellow bus service for students with more than one transfer. I'll repeat that, with more than one transfer. Looking at this line by line, the factors are yellow bus transportation provided. Yes, but only for CCS and CMP 9 through 12 students with more than one transfer. Is the CODA passes offered? Yes. CCS purchases CODA passes for the CCS and CMP 9 through 12th grade students. Who covers the cost of transportation? District will cover the cost to the transportation CCS and CMP passes with more than one transfer. Is the state minimum yet met? Yes. With CODA passes for CCS and CMP 9 through 12 students, the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, public transit is an approved form of transportation. Will there be state noncompliance fines? This option reduces the liability for state noncompliance fines. The estimated projected cost savings is $4.8 million. The reason this analysis matters is because our current model routes every eligible high school student. Even though fewer than 30% actually use the service, based on the December 2025 routing data, we routed approximately 8,692 public high school students. Using the $7.2 million savings model, that equals to about $828 per routed high school student. If fewer than 30% ride, then we are maintaining routed capacity for roughly 6,000 non-riding high school students, which represents approximately $5 million in unused routed capacity. Let me simplify that. This is the operational problem we are trying to solve, not students doing anything wrong, but a transportation system designed around eligibility rather than actual use. The work group is now studying what is safe, feasible, sustainable, and student-focused before bringing a final recommendation back to the board. The next slide begins to show what the initial CODA modeling tells us about public high school students' access to transit. CCS can speak to our student transportation needs, our routing data, and district operations. CODA is best positioned to explain the transit analysis, including stop access, direct routes, transfers, and average travel time. Asleen, at this time, I will turn this over to you.
Thank you, Rodney. Thank you, President Miranda, Vice President Ingalls, and board members. It is my pleasure on behalf of CODA to be with you this evening. I would like to begin with acknowledging the existing ridership for the 2025-2026 CCS school year. This year, there were over 9,000 students, exactly 9,884 distinct high school riders that rode CODA, equating to over 400,000 rides. Students are already choosing our system for school, for extracurriculars, for employment, and more. On the screen here, you will see an analysis based on an anticipated enrollment for the 2026-2027 school year, which includes 7,597 CCS students across 21 schools and 2,236 charter non-public students across 44 schools, all of whom live more than 2 miles from the school. The first takeaway is encouraging. 73% of students have a direct route to school. I'm going to repeat that. 73% of students have a direct route to school. That means a majority of students could get to school, home to school, using a single bus ride. Another 24% would require one transfer, which is still workable, but introduces an additional time and coordination that would need to understand and plan for carefully. That leaves just 3% of students, exactly 65 CCS students and 211 charter non-public students who face the most significant access challenges. These students either live more than 2 miles from a bus stop or attend one of 4 non-public schools that are not within 2 miles of a CODA service. When we look at walking distance, we also get a clear picture of students' experience. On average, students would walk about 0.73 miles from home to bus stop and 0.49 miles from the bus stop to the school. Importantly, nearly half of all students, 46%, would walk no more than half a mile to each of the bus stops, which aligns more closely with the typical urban transit expectations. From school access standpoint, the system coverage is strong. All CCS high schools and about all but 4 charter and non-public schools can be accessed by bus stops within a mile. So when you step back, the picture is this. A majority of students have direct access. A significant portion can be served with one transfer, and a small group will require targeted solutions due to distance and infrastructure gaps. This is exactly why the work we are doing right now matters. These numbers help us move beyond assumptions and begin identifying where the system works well, where we need to focus on safety, improvements, infrastructure, expectations, and additional support to make this successful for all students. I'd now like to highlight key findings from our infrastructure field observations. We convened a cross-organizational team that included 3 CCS representatives, 2 CODA representatives, and 2 City of Columbus representatives. This team conducted on-site visits to each high school, along with the transit stop students would use to access the school. At each location, the group assessed existing conditions and discussed potential improvements. And one thing I want to note here is we did do the data crunching first, but that wasn't enough for us, because while data can tell you a story, it doesn't tell you the whole story. We went and put our eyes on each of those schools. And I think that that's really important to hear, is that we looked at the data and then we double checked the data with our own experience. Overall, a majority of the sites documented strong accessibility. These include Downtown High School, Columbus Alternative High School, Afrocentric, International, East, Walnut Ridge, Whetstone, Linden McKinley, West, Centennial, and South. Across sites, one consistent recommendation emerged: upgrading student crossings to a Type 2, which essentially is a high visibility piano key style striping that improves the safety and visibility. So crosswalks were a huge recommendation in the consideration of this work. A small number of the locations would benefit from more significant improvements, particularly the addition to new sidewalk or crosswalk infrastructure. These include Marion Franklin, Independence, Beechcraft, and a portion of International area. From a service perspective, we also identified a few key considerations. Transit stops near Beechcraft currently operate a rush hour. So while we were looking at infrastructure, we were also asking ourselves a service question, as in CODA, right? So when we looked at Beechcraft, there is a stop right in front of Beechcraft. However, that stop is only serviced from rush hour, and that students would not be using those stops. They would be using 161 or Cleveland Avenue, and so that's why Beechcraft actually kind of went up to the top for us in terms of consideration and areas for improvement. And then I will say this, that Marion Franklin and South High School, they have considerable fixed route service, but they also have our CODA Plus zone, which is an on-demand service that students can also access. I'm now going to go to the next slide that helps you understand what sort of a model stop looks like. East High School is this stop located directly in front of the school, across from the school, and also across from the school from Broad Street to Parkwood. The stops are positioned within the school's speed limit zone, so obviously reducing that speed because Broad Street can be fast, which is an important safety feature for students arriving and departing. The crossing is also designed for visibility and safety with signalized piano keys. You can see here that needs improved, but the piano keys are there, so they need restriped, but that's what we're looking for. And from an accessibility standpoint, the stops have shelters and ADA pads, ensuring that it's usable for all students. And importantly, this is not theoretical. Students are already using these stops and others like them. So when we talk about students' access through CODA, this example illustrates how strong alignment looks. Close proximity to a school, building in safety features, accessible infrastructure, and establishing student use, you see students using it. I'm now going to go to the next slide, which outlines infrastructure and safety challenges. I'd like to briefly highlight the most significant infrastructure gaps identified through this fieldwork. First, Mifflin High School presents the most critical challenge. I'm sure that you all can see Mifflin in your head, and that is obviously something that you sort of see it and say yes. And in this current state, it is effectively not feasible to serve via transit without substantial infrastructure investment. Addressing accessibility would require major improvement, both in cost and in timeline, making this a long-term consideration rather than a near-term solution. At Beechcroft, the primary issues are incomplete sidewalk network and relatively long walking distance to the nearest viable stop, as I mentioned, 161 and Cleveland Avenue. Together, these create meaningful barriers for consistent, safe access. For Eastmoor, the concern is less about availability, and it's more about safety. Pedestrian conditions around the school raise clear safety risks that would need to be addressed to support reliable student use. And finally, there are additional opportunities for improving at Briggs and Marion Franklin. While these are less severe, targeted infrastructure enhancement at these locations could be meaningful and improve access and usability. So that's our infrastructure analysis, but I'm now going to turn toward our CODA CCS Student Trainer Program. We began with 19 students representing 50% of CCS's school participating in the Career Tech Forward Day on June 3rd. These students stepped into the role of peer trainers, they have not completed, but will complete 16 hours of instruction and 10 hours of hands-on training. So in total, it's 10 hours. We've just condensed some of that. Truly, these students are going to help other students. That is the model. Students helping students. What we saw throughout the day was a meaningful growth. Students started the morning timid and unsure, but by the end of the experience, they were actively engaged, confident, and fully participating. The shift in confidence and ownership is one of the most important outcomes of this work because they're going to be working with their peers. So if they can't articulate what's happening at CODA, how are they going to help their peers? We ourselves have a full-time travel trainer, but that's one person for 21 schools, and so we need help, and these students are going to be that help. From skills standpoint, students gain hands-on transit knowledge and access, many sharing that they learned how to navigate the system in a real-world way as both empowering and eye-opening, especially as they realize how extensive CODA services are, including the availability of mainstream for all individuals with disabilities. These also built practical transit skills, learning how to use the color-coded system, our stop IDs, and the different types of CODA services. One of the most important activities was an interactive map where students mapped their own route, and they got to see how to get from home to school, an after-school program, and that's what we would ask them to do with their peers. This experience also connected directly with their learning goals. Students earned up to 50 hours toward work-based learning requirements, including community service and internship credit, reinforcing that this is not just a transportation conversation, this is also a career readiness and life skill. And finally, students practice self-advocacy, learning how to ask for help, communicating with the operators, and navigating the system with confidence. Our operators are there, and you can ask them for help. Importantly, this work is already extended beyond the students. We connected with approximately 20 coaches across participating CCS schools, expanding awareness and support at the staff level as well, because while we can start with the students, the reinforcement happens with the staff. To meet varying schedules, we are offering 4 different training options for 2-hour coach sessions, ensuring strong participation and flexibility. The response from staff has been overwhelmingly positive. Many shared that they learned new information about us, adults saying, we learned more from you. And notably, several had never accessed CODA before, highlighting the broader impact of this education. We also see clear momentum building. Schools are already asking for the next cohort, and they're growing interested in expanding the model beyond CCS. So the takeaway here, this work is not just about transit systems. It's about students building independence, confidence, and real world readiness. And just as importantly, it is creating broader engagement across staff and partners, positioning this to be a scalable model in the future. I'm almost done, I promise. Oh, one other thing I wanted to share, and I apologize, I had one for everybody, but I left them. This is our travel training guide. I have been working at CODA for 6 years. This piece is one of the proudest pieces I think we've ever put out. This is what our students will train their peers with. It is a comprehensive travel training guide, and I will make sure that each of you gets a copy of this. In summary, I wanted to briefly ground us in where we are today. First, no final decisions have been made regarding high school students' transportation. This work remains in an active evolution and planning and evaluation. What is clear, however, is the strength of the partnership support between CCS, CODA, the City of Columbus, Columbus City Council, and MORPC. At this time, the research and data collection completed to date is consistently pointing to the meaningful opportunity both in expanding access and improving outcomes for students. To translate that opportunity into action, subcommittees have been established and are actively advancing implementation planning, working through operations, infrastructure, policy considerations regarding required for success. Importantly, school leadership engagement continues to grow. Their participation is strengthening operational planning and ensuring that what is designed is both practical and aligned with the day-to-day realities of school. So, while decisions are still ahead of us, the foundation is strong, grounded in data, supported by partners, and moving steadily toward a clear path forward.
What's next? Establishing timelines and costs for each recommended improvement came from the field observations. CODA providing plans for information sharing on routing changes, delays, reroutes, cancellation of trips through their transit app to improve communications to all customers. Developing plans for potential future sidewalk placement and the repairs near neighborhood schools. Obtaining information technology and legal input regarding RFID and enabling student success cards and student data, and drafting joint standard operating procedures for incident responses. Those are some of the highlights that we will be continuing to work forward through as we go through this process. At this time, I will turn it back over to Mr. Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Steffel-Bean. Thank you, Mrs. Rodriguez. There's an acronym on this page that I just want to clarify for those who may not know the technology. Obviously, IT is information technology. RFID is radio frequency identification. Just wanted to call that out. So in closing, I would like to thank the board, the superintendent, our transportation team, CODA, the City of Columbus, City Council, MORPC, and all participating partners in their continued engagement throughout this process. This is complex work. This work group will continue throughout the 2026 calendar year, and at this point, I want to reiterate that no high school transportation changes have been implemented. All current high school transportation services remain in place, and a final recommendation is not anticipated until January 2027. That concludes our presentation. I want to thank you, and we welcome your questions and comments.
I want to thank you for providing an update. I think the work you've been doing is very informative. It's what we need. And so I look forward to the final product in January 2027. All right, questions? Board Member Adair?
Yes, I want to echo that to start off by thanking everyone. This is exactly what we need to be doing as a city, coming together and working to solve these big problems. I do want to ask a technical question about the slide. If you could go back to, I think it was slide 8 and 9, where we're talking about option 2. I just want to be clear, that is not what the board was talking about when we say yellow bus transportation provided. Unless something changed in the law that I don't know about, we are not required, if a CCS student has one or more transfers, to provide yellow bus.
That is correct.
Is that what, that's not how I'm interpreting what you said in the presentation, because this is why I got upset during that vote, because the yellow bus services, if it's one or more transfer, that only applies to the charter non-public students, not our students. Our students can have as many transfers as it would be. I just want to make sure we're still on the same page about what option 2 is, and everybody has that understanding.
That is correct. The state law says that CCS students can have unlimited transfers. And the limitations to one or more transfers only applies to the charter non-publics. I will say that there is discussion about how we would go forward with that if we have students that are CCS students, more than one transfer. Would we consider that as like services and do yellow bus service for them as well? Right now, that number is 65 students.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm not opposed to it. But I'm looking at the number, because that 4.8 number is still the same number that we were looking at back in December. And I believe that if we were to do that, that would then mean we're not hitting 4.8.
No,
Okay.
We went through that data yesterday. And we've been reviewing it for the last couple weeks, because our initial inclination was that as well, that we would lose some of that $4.8 million savings. As the data we ran yesterday, it is 65 students, and we would be able to encompass that with very little change to the data or to the cost savings at all.
Okay.
And in doing so, but Board Member Adair, we would be able to provide like services for our students at the same way for CMP students, so that our students would not be experience more transfers and so forth. So, but again,
I hear that.
These are all factors that
you made a big point of saying that these were the 2 options the board put forward. And this is not that I'm opposed to the change, but I just want to be clear that this was not the actual one the board considered. You're now modifying, looking at it, digging in. That's great. We need to know that. But this is a change. The board did not vote on that in December. It was looking at providing 0 access of yellow bus services, while the charter non-public students who got one or more transfers would get yellow bus. So there was a distinction in equity about what our students got versus what they got. So not opposed to let's being creative and figuring it out. I just want to be clear, because this is a public thing, and you said that this is what the board voted on or was considering, and that's not the case.
Board Member Adair, if I may, I just want to draw a distinction. That came out of the working group, so we apologize that additional, when we were talking with the chiefs in the room, everybody came to this consensus. We would not, well, the group, I'm talking as the working group. The working group came to the consensus that no CCS student would also have to have more than one transfer. What we do for CMP, so I apologize that distinction was added there. You are correct. When we looked back, that was not the distinction in December, but the working group said, we're not going to require CCS students to have multiple transfers if that is, what is not required of CMPs. So that was a recommendation from the working group, and I apologize for that confusion, but that was added based on the working group's recommendation. I want to recognize that.
Board Member Simmons.
Thank you, President Dr. Miranda. I don't think the issue is that the working group, kind of did his work and found new information. I think the issue here is the board, when we made that decision, it was a 3-4 decision. And 2 of my colleagues who, voted to do this working group and continue said they felt very concerned about our students would not receive the same equitable services. And that was a big factor behind their vote, behind the board's decision. And so now this is June, and we're learning that what I was led to believe and what the board was led to believe was that it was either we do the yellow buses or we do CODA, and our kids don't get any yellow bus service, but the charter non-public kids do. And so we were told that we didn't have the option to transport our kids who would have more than one transfer. And so now that it's June, and I'm very happy we brought in outside experts, because I think this is a topic we needed the assistance on very clearly. And so I'm happy we got that additional information. But at the time last December, what the board was informed was that we had basically an option between yellow bus service for everybody or CODA passes for CCS students, but yellow bus services for chartered non-public students who need more than one transfer. This is a third option. And I also have issue with the fact that the projected cost savings is no longer accurate. I don't know why we would put a number on our slide. You know, if we're going to transport those 69 students, those 65 students are going to cost money. And so if our projected cost savings are now 4.6, 4.4, 4.65, whatever, you know, let's get the correct number on the information we're going to provide to the community. But I don't understand why. You know, it's great that we're digging in, as Board Member Adair said, and we're learning new information, but my issue here is, where's the update to the board? Hey, we've learned new information that we have a third option. We can transport CCS students who require an additional transfer. And so I just, you know, that was a very big factor of the board's decision last December, and it's costing us money to continue to have our high school students on the yellow buses this year. And so that's key information that we needed to know last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Simmons. Yes, Board Member.
I have a maybe easy question. Well, I think it's easy, but I don't know. Have we thought about what additional staff support, if any, is required if we were to fully utilize CODA? Would there be anything on the CCS side that we should consider as far as staffing stops, having safety? I don't know if we've had those discussions in the work group.
Yes, those are things that each one of the independent committees, we're working with the Safety and Security Committee, the Central Enrollment Committee for the assignment of passes for both CCS students and CMP students. All of those are the topics that these committees are working on right now to wash out and look at what kind of things it's going to entail if the decision is made. And they're continually getting to each step, and then they're going to bring that as part of our recommendation.
Okay, yeah, that's great, because I remember when we were having this conversation, there were lots of parents like, who's going to be around to make sure, you know, they get from point A to point B and don't veer off or whatever, and also just like safety on the buses and safety on, you know, waiting at the stop and all of those kinds of things. And so I think that's great that you're talking about that. Thank you. And thank you all for the work.
Board Member Simmons.
Thank you. I do want to say I was really impressed with the student component, the student training component. You know, that really blew me away, and because it is really empowering to teach folks how to utilize our bus system and how to do that just from knowledge. And you know, it's really great, and I love when I get to ride the bus and help other folks navigate it. But my question is specifically around how you know, CODA and the CCS are going to partner to get our students information about, you know, delays and reroutes of that sort. I think my biggest concern now is that the current public doesn't really get that information well, so why would CCS get that information, you know, better to push it out to our students? And so, you know, I know there's in the plans, there's, you know, a transit support desk. Maybe we could get more information around that, but there really needs to be a way that CCS is notified of changes to routes, delays, and that we're able to communicate that to our students. And we also have to consider that, you know, some of our schools are like Briggs, and the number 9 is an hour route. I know it's a big goal of CODA to eventually be a city where we don't have any hour routes. But, you know, for now, that's what it is. And so, you know, if our students miss that one bus, you know, if I'm a high school student, I'm going home, I'm going back to bed. If the next bus comes in the next hour, I'm probably not going to go to school that day. But if the next bus comes in 15 minutes, you know, I might stay there and wait for the next bus and go to school that day. And so I think having that information, the district having that information and being able to equip it and pass it down to our students, and so they know, you know, I don't want our kids standing out at the bus not knowing, you know, is it coming, is it not? And the truth is, you know, as you know, you do ride CODA now, and you will see people when there's a reroute or a delay or change. You'll see folks standing downtown at a bus stop. That I know because I have a lot of experience, and I'm tenacious and resourceful and have my mobility. You know, I'm able to navigate our city and our bus system really well. But when I see folks standing at a stop that I know the bus isn't coming because it's rerouted, it's really concerning. And as a board member, I don't want that to be the case for our students. And so we definitely need to have more, you know, the information's got to be accurate that CODA pushes out to the public, I think, because if the information isn't accurate, it's going to be hard for us as a district to let our families and our students know what's up.
Thank you, Board Member Simmons.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Board Member Kennedy.
Again, I appreciate the work that's been done with this work group. Though I'm on the executive work group, I have taken the liberty to go to the tactical work group meetings, and the level of data gathering that the team is presenting is very, very in-depth, and there's a lot of thought that's being centered around this project. And so I'm encouraged there, certainly. And to Board Simmons' point, I mean, it's a great point. In the absence of us being able to share data in a way that's going to be effective for the district to know what's happening with our students, for CODA, any other partners, for us to be able to really partner, those data sharing agreements, those data sharing processes have to be in place, or all of this will just be for the show, right? And so if we're really, really serious, I would certainly love to see, and the way that we're approaching the data, it appears we are very serious, right? And the subgroup, the work that the subgroups are doing, is magnificent, right? The work is being done there. But if we're going to really do the work, we got to make sure that we are sharing data and opening that information system and processes.
I appreciate that, and I know that was a request of the subcommittee to have a data sharing agreement. When in reflection, us receiving information opens us up to, don't ask me the acronym name, but FERPA. And so we can push our data to you all. We don't have the CMP information. So that's why we've relied on the CCS team, who is doing a magnificent job crunching the data, sitting there. And so we are sharing the data, but instead of us receiving it, we're pushing our data over so that you all can use it and put that out to the group. However, that doesn't mean that other agreements cannot exist amongst us, right? So as we talk about safety and security, what do those potential agreements look like? Because there is a line in the sand where CCS ends and CODA begins, and how do we share those incidents, accidents, safety mechanisms, and all of that. I do want to address one issue around pushing information. This fall, CODA is looking to launch a push notification that would go to any rider, I was going to say students, but any rider, and they can identify the line that they want to know the information about. So that is expected in the fall. I can't give you a direct date, but please keep your eye out, because we do know, and we have heard from our riders, that they want more accurate information around reroutes and canceled buses. We also acknowledge that we've had some vehicle issues with our electric vehicles. This is public knowledge. We've had some issues with our I'm going to read it directly so that I make sure that I'm saying this correctly. Since 2025, CODA has exclusively purchased compressed natural gas. We were originally purchasing electric vehicles. The reliability on those battery electric vehicles have not met our expectations, and we have gone back to compressed natural gas. So that has been a big part of the pain that unfortunately some of our community members have had to feel, is that those vehicles have not met our expectations, and that has forced us to do some reroutes and cuts and all that stuff. So that notification is coming in the fall. We acknowledge our shortcomings. We are turning the tide and buying these compressed natural gas vehicles, and we hope that in the future that those lines are not cut due to vehicle availability.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Board Member Simmons.
Thank you. I don't really understand the thing about the data sharing, because, tonight on the agenda, we're going to approve contracts and data sharing agreements where we're going to have to send our student information off to, not government entities, but completely private corporations. And so we don't need an answer right now, but if I could get more information as to what exactly the obstacle is from CODA's end, I just don't quite, we share data with a variety of entities all the time. And then my other two questions are, the board originally was told during our joint committee there was some concept with vans where there'd be a van that would roll around and then a student could it was a kind of, we're gonna, excuse me, experiment.
Go to plus.
Excuse me. We're gonna experiment. Excuse me. We're going to experiment with that, and there was a concept that the team went and saw. Sorry, it's just, I thought the idea was really cool. And so the team went and saw these fans in Denver, Colorado, and they came back and said, maybe this is something we could do in a few years, but not now. There was we had talked about it as like kind of something far down the road.
Okay, I think you may be misinterpreting a van for
It was kind of like
a shuttle system.
Yeah, a shuttle where students can get on at any point.
Buses. Yeah, those were still yellow buses.
Oh, those were still yellow. Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Our visit to Denver, they ran a shuttle system that ran on a loop service, and you had about 2 or 3 buses on one direction of the loop, 2 or 3 buses on the opposite direction of the loop, and they picked up at designated stops. Very similar to what CODA does.
Plus, yeah.
When we came back and we tried to implement that, with our current direct routing model, is physically impossible.
Okay.
But if we are able to get to a situation to where we go back to community schools, we are starting to draw some of this back, we can expand our experimentation with the routing models, then it becomes feasible.
Okay, I thought it was really innovative too, especially if that concept could be done without the yellow buses and with just the vans, and if that's a possibility.
Can I
If
jump
it's
in,
more
Brandon?
micro.
Was it more? I think I'm recalling a little bit of this. There was the Denver thing, but I think it was like more of a first and last mile van shuttle.
I think it was.
And it wasn't that they were going to look into it. I think it was just brought up as like,
Okay.
is this something
Okay.
that
I'm
could
sorry, I
work?
misunderstood at the time. Then.
Yeah, no, they brought up Denver and this model, but I think it was like, so for example, Mifflin, the Mifflin stop. If kids got off at the Mifflin stop and there was a van and they got in the van and could get up the road.
Those, I believe I recall some of this conversation. I think my response to that, if I'm correct, we have to be very careful with that because of like services. The minute we do something, and that's what we're working with the Department of Education workforce right now to get some clarity on, because it's also been discussed to possibly be able to roll this out in phases. The limitations with that are if we pick one student up in a yellow bus, then it's like services for everything else. So the limitation of phases is very hard to navigate, and there's not direct answers we get. I do recall that conversation now that we spoke a little bit more about it, and that's where we would have to ask for some legal clarity to say is if we do this with a van, and is it considered a like service? Would it go down that avenue, and then would we then be obligated to offer that to charter non-publics?
Thank you. I thought it was really innovative, but I know ORC makes it so hard for us to be innovative in many ways. And then my last question, which doesn't need to be answered now, but I'd like a legal update to the board about this option 2A, I'm going to call it 2A, which would be, because it's not option 2, it's not what the board called option 2 many months ago, but option 2A, this new option that has just been unveiled to the community and to the board. But I'd like a legal update on where's the legal basis for it, or we don't have to have it now, but written to the board, what's the legal basis for it in ORC, and how much it's going to cost to transport those 65 students, and when we discovered it, and why the board wasn't able to be apprised of that when we made our decision at a later date, please.
Yeah, we can do that at a later date, but I would also say, I was not on the board then, but we didn't have this information, so there's no way you could have voted one way or the other because there was no information. I think that's the benefit of this work group, is that you were able to dive into the data to make different decisions. And so you did make a decision in December, but it was because this data would not have been available unless you had a work group. So that's important to remember. Board member Dr. Pierce?
Thank you so much, President Miranda. I think this question goes to the entire working group as you all are getting student feedback. Could we ensure that we are getting feedback from a diversity of students? I think a lot of times some students, our families may be may be more likely to enroll in a particular program like the one that you all offered. My mother was very old school, so I learned how to take the CODA bus in elementary school, find your way home, right? On some just like figure it out. And so I think we have students that are learning public transportation in a variety of different ways, and we can't always assume that our students that need it the most are going to enroll in a particular program like you're offering. Also, I think we need a diversity of students because, as you noted, with the Beechcroft route, right, there are different practices, athletic practices that are shifting and happening. The girls' basketball team might have the gym the first, couple of hours after school and it switches off. So students are trying to figure out, okay, do I have time to go home? Can I come back? What's my transportation looking like? If I'm a student at COS and I need to get to Centennial for my practice, how is that going to work, right? And so I think having an audience with those students and really looking at how we as a community need to lean into public transportation would be extremely helpful.
Thank you. I want to thank the work group again. I look forward to your presentation in January. Great work. Thank you.
Thank you to
President, the resolution is every 6 months, and so we should have another update before January if it's June now.
Well, the
6 months from now would be
right,
December.
but I think the
there should be 2 updates to the board before the recommendation's made.
Our goal was
That's the resolution that was approved by the board.
The resolution included making sure that we had a final recommendation to the board before January of 2027. So our goal was to make sure that we come back to you with those recommendations.
Right.
I want to name and acknowledge that we will absolutely honor the board's resolution and directive from December and make sure that the recommendations and the data that we bring back to you is reflective of the very specific language that the board voted on in December. So that is our commitment to you. We will make sure that we pull the language directly from the resolution. And the team will continue to analyze the data, explore all options. If there is a third or fourth option that the data reveals is a possibility that also meets our standards of sustainability, safety, access for all students, we will also bring that back to you in the follow-up conversation. So we'll make sure, again, I just want to name and recognize that we received that feedback, and we will do everything to make sure that the final recommendations and the next update includes the very specific language that the board voted on in December. I also want to give again thanks and kudos to not only our team members who are here with us tonight, Maurice Woods, Rodney Stuffelbein, and Ashlyn Rodriguez, but there are several committee members that have been working tirelessly on the committee work, as well as the subcommittees now that are picking up additional areas of need and working on providing recommendations and feedback. And I also want to say thank you to all of our partners who are maybe in the room with us tonight or not in the room. I believe that Board Member Adair said this in the beginning of her comments, that this is what we should be doing as a community and a city, is working together and planning how we support our residents, how we support our community members who are also our students. And so I am confident that when we land with a final recommendation, we will also land with an exemplar of what this true collaboration looks like between multiple agencies, between Columbus City Schools, the city, CODA, and MORPC. Will be able to say, here's a structure, here's a process from the different phases that the team has gone through to ensure that we're working collaboratively, again, across multiple agencies. So again, thank you to all of our partners who are not in the room with us tonight, but are with us in spirit and have been helping and supporting us. No one has said no to us as a part of this work. Everyone has said, what else do you need? How can we support? Where do I need to be? When do I need to show up? How do I need to engage in this work? And so I just want to acknowledge and appreciate the willingness from all of our partners, community members, even our students who have said, yes, sign me up to be a trainer. And I know that there will also be additional opportunities for the adults. As Dr. Pierce mentioned, broader engagement with our community for training opportunities, ride-along opportunities. There will be specific opportunities and engagements for board members, for our CCS staff members who will be supporting students as well. And that work needs to happen, and that work will continue to happen regardless of the board vote, right? Because we know that thousands of our students every day are writing CODA, and we need to continue to build their expertise, their confidence in their transition and on CODA, whether it's to school, from school, or to activities or work. And so we'll continue with that work as well. So again, thank you to the team, thank you to our partners, and we look forward to continuing the dialogue.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. I see the issue is the resolutions that were distributed, this is not what the board voted on, and this is why I was stressing that it is important board docs, our official record of board activity, be accurate. So what was distributed at the board table now, this is language that maybe was working or at one point in time, but if you go actually to board docs, then you can see the language, and forgive me, Board President Miranda, it's 6-month intervals beginning January 31st, 2026. So we should be good if we do it January 2027.
Thank you.
But this is not. This is why board docs has to be accurate when we meet. That way, when the treasurer's office does the minutes, we're able to go back and know what the board's direction was. But what was distributed does not include, and also it doesn't make sense that we would have did the work group and did state minimums. So,
thank you, Board Member Dr. Pierce.
Thank you so much, President Miranda. So yes, Board Member Simmons is correct. It is in 6-month intervals. My request is that the board work on updating our board working calendar to recalendar all the updates that we will need moving forward for our 26-27 school year, and that we, again, the request has been made, include that in the superintendent's weekly updates that come to the board to ensure that all board members are adequately prepared prior to meetings and well informed.
Thank you. All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Chapman?
Yes, so we have another presentation tonight. Tonight, our second presentation is a school realignment update. This is an update on the district's ongoing school realignment work. As the board knows, this work has been part of a larger effort to review our facilities, enrollment patterns, building use, and long-term needs across the district. The goal is to make thoughtful decisions that support stronger learning environments for students while also being responsible stewards of district resources. Tonight's update will provide background on the realignment process, review previous board actions, and share where things stand with consolidations completed for the 26-27 school year and those planned for the upcoming school years. The presentation will also include information on proposed state legislation related to underused school facilities and what it could mean for the district. This time, I'll turn the presentation over to Dr. Brown, our Chief of Strategy and Performance.
Good evening.
Evening.
So today, I'm going to go through a series of slides here, beginning with a little bit of background information that formed part of the purpose and the reason for the consolidation. The series of board actions that have been taken to date connected to that. I do want to introduce Senate Bill 311 because it was passed a little bit less than a week ago, and I think it adds some urgency to this conversation. I want to talk about the completed consolidations and the planned consolidations moving forward. And then at the end, looking at the list of buildings that are below 60% as outlined by Senate Bill 311. And those that have been addressed through consolidation to this point, and those that remain at risk. This is touchy today. So we have 112 academic facilities across the system, and we have approximately 60,000 seats available for our students across the system, whereas we have only about 45,000 students, so there's quite a bit of excess capacity across the system. This was one of the driving factors behind consolidation and looking to be able to move forward to bring the number of seats in the system in closer alignment to the total number of students that we have. That being said, we would always expect to have a little bit of excess capacity across the system because special ed students require additional space in buildings, and that has implications for capacity both for the rooms for self-contained rooms, but also for inclusion. And so that impacts capacity across the lot of our buildings as well and requires some excess space. Also, just for some background, secondary settings tend to run at about 85% of capacity. And the reason for that is because, again, the rooms have to be booked in a little bit different way, scheduled to allow movement of students across classes, et cetera. It's a lot different than an elementary setting when kids sit in one classroom all day. Again, for background, many of those 112 facilities that we have across the system are quite old. The average age of facilities across the system is 45 years, and we have some buildings that were here before electricity. And I will come back to that a little bit later along the way. We are incredibly thankful for our community and its investment in PI dollars as we move forward. The PI dollars are helping us be able to make improvements across the system as we move forward. And part of the work around consolidation is an effort to be wise with how we invest PI dollars to be able to provide the best learning environments for our students as we move forward. In the start of the 24 start of the 24 year, the board approved the membership of Community Task Force. That was done in February of 2024 with the goal of determining which school or schools should be closed. The task force made recommendations to the board in June of that year, and the Board of Education continued the exploration of recommendations and made multiple visits to schools before making its decisions in December of 24, and then coming back and making additional decisions for consolidation and closure in December of 25. Those decisions are outlined here. In December of 24, the board voted to close Broadley Elementary School no earlier than the 26-27 school year. Buckeye Middle School no earlier than the 26-27 school year. And the McGuffey facility, which houses Cause, and I want to be very clear, there was no desire to close Cause, but rather to move the programming to another site, a more modern facility. Again, no earlier than 26-27. Closing Moeller Elementary, no earlier than 26-27, and closing West Broad, no earlier than 26-27. And the board was very specific. They wanted that to be considered in the FMP process. And as I recall at the time, it was very contingent on the idea of having a plan for replacement building in the works to be able to accommodate those students. The following year, the board voted for closure for Como, effective 27-28. Duxbury Park, no earlier than 27-28. The Everett facility, again, which houses the gifted program, not closing the gifted program, relocating the gifted program from an aging facility, again, effective 27-28. And the closure of the Fairwood Elementary, effective 26-27. As I mentioned, last week, Senate Bill 311 was passed through the Senate. This has been in the background through much of our communication with the community. As we were doing community events in the fall last year, we talked about the impending legislation and how that could impact our buildings. Well, this legislation is passed, and I don't want to pretend for a moment that this captures the content of that legislation. That's like 134 pages long, but just hitting the high points on it. If this were to pass unchanged through the House and become law, we would be required to offer unused facilities for sale or for lease. And when we talk about for sale, The sale is not for market value, but market value as an educational facility rather than the market value of the building as a whole or the property. So just for a quick overview of underuse, which actually as they define it, they call it unused. This slide was actually presented in the Equitable and Transparent Resource Committee meeting a little while back. When they talk about 60%, they're talking about 60% of either the building capacity or the highest enrollment in the past 10 years. That or clause is a big deal. So Downtown High School has a capacity of 800 students. Its highest enrollment in the last 10 years is 501 students, and its current enrollment is 445. Under Senate Bill 311, it does not meet the 60% criteria for the capacity of the building. It's under that. It would meet this criteria for 60% of its highest enrollment. By this legislation, again, just looking at the capacity criteria alone, this would be considered an unused facility, and we would have to put it up for offer, for lease, or for sale. This is the list of buildings that meet that 60% criteria, and they are in ascending order of utilization. So the boys and girls schools are pretty close to the top of that, and coming down to the bottom, Johnson Park is right at the threshold. We'll come back to the slide at the end because it will we'll be able to show which of the buildings on this list have been taken care of through consolidation or through planned consolidation, and again, which buildings are left at the end. What you see as you look down this list, the center column there is the number of seats or the capacity of the building available. The second column is utilization, what % of those seats are filled. And the final column is what year the school was open. And you'll see in the case of Ohio Elementary School, it says FMP. And Eastgate Elementary School, you'll see, was 2008 as an opening. So FMP means it was substantially improved as part of the FMP process, modernized. So moving on through completed consolidations. This year, Broadly, at the end of the academic year, closed for instruction. Broadly students are going to attend Eastgate. Eastgate was one of the buildings that was underutilized as well. Eastgate, again, is a modern facility, recently built. So we've moved students from an aging facility to a neighboring modern facility, so students will have a better learning environment as they move forward, and it preserves the investment in Eastgate that the community's already made. Additionally, this expands the catchment area for East High School. So the students who live in the Broadly community will now attend East High School by address as they matriculate through the system. This will help us make better advantage or make better use of East High School as we move forward as well. Fairwood, again, closed at the end of this year as well. Fairwood students will attend Ohio Avenue Elementary School by address next year. Again, Ohio Avenue is a school that's been modernized. So students are moving from an aging facility that hasn't been modernized to a modern learning environment, improved conditions for our students. And it preserves that, again, that investment into Ohio Elementary School. And Ohio feeds into East. So this moves the Moeller catchment area into the East feeder pattern as well, which would, again, help with the enrollment of East High School over time as those kids matriculate upward through Champion into East. Moeller was, Fairwood, sorry. Moeller was closed for instruction at the conclusion of this academic year. Moeller students will attend Livingston or Lincoln Park by address, and the break point is essentially Freebus Avenue. Alignment on this for the guiding principles, again, we're moving students from an aging facility to two modern facilities in this case, and it preserves those investments in both Livingston and Lincoln Park elementary schools. I want to thank the teams that have worked through this process during this year. It was an enormous to get this done, to close these three facilities. and to do it in a planful way that engaged the families in terms of establishing new boundaries for the schools, and also providing opportunities for memorialization of the buildings as they closed. We know that that transition is hard for families, but we know also that our students are going to be served in modern facilities, and we're honoring, again, the investment that the community has made in those facilities. Now we're transitioning into the planned consolidations for 27, 28, and beyond. Como was identified by the board to have an effective closure in 27, 28. So it would close at the end of the coming school year. And Oakland Park is anticipated to receive the vast majority of Como students. I say the majority because we'll have to go through a boundary process, and we're actually going to look to do enrollment balancing across that whole area in the coming year. So the actual attendance zone won't be determined until after the community has an opportunity to participate in that boundary process and determine where those boundary lines should lie. So there's a real opportunity for the community to be involved in a genuine two-way dialogue with where those boundary lines will end up landing in the coming year. And this will impact all the schools east of 71, south of Morse Road, and north of 670. So it's a sizable chunk of the city that's going to be involved in this boundary process as we move through. Again, the focus here is to have students attend the best possible learning facility that we have and to preserve the community's investment in Oakland Park Elementary. Every one of these that we've talked about so far moves students from an aging facility to a more modern facility. Everett is also meant to close at the end of the 27-28 school year. The Gifted program is in one of our oldest facilities. It was opened in 1898. An interesting little fact is that the first public electric company facility in Columbus opened the year after that. So just for some, I think the community has got its money's worth out of that facility. It would be, we came with a proposal to move the Gifted program into one of our largest elementary schools. And I think this was one of the things that began to kick off the EdSpec conversation, because it was pretty clear that the programming that goes on in the current Everett facility wouldn't fit easily into even one of our largest elementary schools. So if we were to move forward with this, we really need to be looking at secondary facilities. And I think we have some opportunities for that. And we've been looking at those more closely as we move forward. And again, want to work with both the committees to evaluate those options and evaluate them in terms of what programming would fit in available facilities as we move forward. Moving forward to 28-29, there are several involved there. Buckeye and McGuffey are somewhat intertwined as we move forward. The timing for these projects are connected to the planful transition of things from downtown high school. So we have a lot of CTE programming that exists at downtown high school that needs to be transitioned out of there. And this would give us the opportunity then to move CAUSE into downtown high school, which would certainly provide them a much more modern facility to support their program as they move forward. And this aligns very well, again, to the emerging academy model and moving, again, CTE programming into academy settings across the city. Originally, when we had talked about Buckeye, we had talked about potentially moving Buckeye into Marion Franklin. The numbers don't work. And additionally, we got a lot of feedback from the community that they don't like the idea of a 612. They're not real thrilled with our 712s either. So based on that feedback, we also looked at the alignment to the FMP process and what had existed in the FMP. It was something I heard a lot from the Marion Franklin community. Hey, the FMP talks about this being the site for the new Southside High School. So by consolidating South and Marion Franklin High Schools at the Marion Franklin site, it preserves that site for a new Southside High School, which again aligns to the FMP, the previous FMP. And that opportunity to have a new Southside High School would actually make the South Side somewhat unique in that virtually every building on the South Side would be modernized at that point. It would be again, sort of the beacon for what we would maybe want for other parts of the community as well. We would move Buckeye then to South High School, and that would then allow us to establish a traditional middle school at South High School, serving grades 6 through 8, which also means that the entire South Side would have standardized grade bands. Pre-K 5 at all the elementary schools, a standardized middle school, and a large high school on the Marion Franklin site.
Normal size.
Yes,
Normal size.
normal size. Large for CCS.
Yeah.
Normal size compared to peer districts.
Absolutely. You are correct. It would be a normal-sized high school. And again, the other thing that is sort of consistent through this is we are building larger school communities. We're serving students in improved schools in larger communities, which means that we have better offerings as well. Duxbury Park. There was a lot of conversation about this. This is a program that I'm familiar with, been in the building quite a few times. Again, we had looked at combining Duxbury Park with a neighboring elementary school, and would have meant combining the programs, not running them parallel, but actually combining them. This was not acceptable. I think there was a real desire instead to have Duxbury on the Fort Hays compound and having a pre-K-12 pathway for the arts. Obviously, this would require new construction. And, at this point, again, I want to come back to saying, hey, incredibly thankful to the community for the PI dollars, which are allowing us to do improvements. We have a lot of needs in terms of construction. We have some places where we need new seats to be able to accommodate. We have lots of competing interests here between, even in the case of the ones we've talked about here, Duxbury and West, both are of high interest. So as we move through this process, we really need to look at that comprehensively in that capital plan that will come to the board in January of 27. So any existing site that we would choose to move Duxbury to in the in-between would require some compromise. And again, I think we need to work with the board committees to look at available sites and what those compromises would look like, and what facility modifications we would need to put in place to be able to reasonably accommodate the arts programming until we were able to see that vision for having again, a pre-K-12 feeder pattern on the Fort Hays campus. So the next slide, I'm going to come back to that list, and I just want to look at the list of schools that are below 60%, and the ones that are addressed in the plan, and those that are not. At the top, you see Broadley, Fairwood, and Moeller have all been closed at the end of this year, so they are coming off the list. Columbus Downtown High School will exceed 60% with the inclusion of the cause programming. East High School will be well above what it needs in terms of the threshold too, as we, again, see those kids matriculating up through. Eastgate receives Broadly, so it will be above 60% as well. This helps preserve that. Marion Franklin, with the inclusion of South, would be above that 60% threshold as well. And Ohio Elementary, again, by receiving Fairwood, is well above that threshold. We are continuing, again, to have a dialogue and engaging the board committees in the process around Columbus Gifted Academy and Duxbury Park. And I feel like there needs to be a certain urgency to that conversation given Senate Bill 311. If Senate Bill 311 goes through the House unchanged, there's a lot about that is not in favor for our students. At the bottom of the list, you see a group of schools that are not addressed by the consolidation plan. These are all vulnerable at this point. If this, again, bill passes through the House and becomes law with no modification, these would all be buildings that we would need to consider listing, or would be required to list for sale or lease. And so there is an opportunity, I think, to think about the relationship between the buildings on this list and the buildings that we want to consolidate moving forward. But again, there's going to be some urgency with that as we move forward. With that, I think there's room for a discussion.
Thank you. Board Member Adair.
Russ, can you just go back to that last slide again? Because these are public facing. I just want to be super clear because you wrote on here Marion Franklin High School would exceed with all South Side high schools, but the actual plan would not be to put South kids in Marion Franklin. It's actually to build a new building. So I don't know how that plays out with this House bill, because it isn't our plan to shove kids into Marion Franklin. It's actually to build our first normal size high school for the standards of Ohio right now, which is exciting, I think, for the South Side, as you identified. So that's not really what you meant when you wrote that, right? And then if it is, are you saying in order to just preserve Marion Franklin, we would be looking at doing something that isn't what I just said? It really would be moving kids into Marion Franklin.
To be able to close Buckeye, we need to be able to move them either to Marion Franklin or to South. Again, the original FMP plan involved making South High School the middle school for the South Side, and the Marion Franklin site the location for the South Side High School. If we want to preserve that site, again, it would be, if we do not move students into that site, it will be vulnerable for sale, and we would then potentially lose that location for a Southside High School. I don't pretend that this is a pleasant conversation right now, but again, greatly concerned about the language in Senate Bill 311, and I think that that's language that we should spend a little more time, particularly in the committees, going through. Again, it just passed last week on the 10th. Again, I'm just touching or scratching the surface of a 134-page bill that is pretty wide-ranging. But it does concern me that this is now passed through the Senate, and if we don't act with some urgency, these are properties that we could lose.
And Dr. Brown, forgive me, I don't know if you said this, but the original plan, we talked about moving Buckeye middle school students, transitioning them to Marion Franklin and creating a 612 campus. Even if we did that, number one, there are several concerns with doing that. One, the community was not in favor of a 612 campus. And if we moved Buckeye students into Marion Franklin, the school would still be underutilized, and still we would be, impacted by the language in Senate Bill 311. And that would be, again, even more challenging for us, because it would prevent us from being able to implement any of our FMP strategies to complete the South Side. When we think about building a high school on a site where that's the largest land mass that we have on the South Side, because there's actually two properties right there on the site of Marion Franklin. You think about South High School, they do not have space to have athletic facilities right by the school, near the school. They're using a space that's further away. But at Marion Franklin site, we would have the space and the land to build a large high school a comprehensive high school that would, provide comprehensive programming and athletic facilities that would support programming at a high school.
And I know that you said you're still digging through, and part of what you're mentioning is the timing. For the other green ones, in particular East High School, when you're saying they're going to receive 300 to 400 more students, I mean, that's not bam. This is matriculation through the new middle school. So do we have a timeline for when or how long these properties have to be under 60% before they hit the trigger? Because East High Schools could still be under 60 for a few years because we're waiting for the matriculation to get there.
Again, I've done a read through that portion of the bill that applies to this. I would like to spend a little bit more time talking with my colleagues and having a little bit more in-depth review of that bill and some of the implications in it. There is a caveat in the bill that would allow for appeal. And I would suggest having a plan in place that involves consolidation and a projected change in enrollment over time could be a basis for a strong appeal. I get concerned when we don't have a plan in place for building at all, because then I don't know how we would make an appeal or argue against the consequences of the law. But again, this is just a cursory read. I think we really do need folks to lean into it quite deeply and to understand the implications before. And again, I think both ETRM and the Academic and Facility Alignment Committee are places that we should have that dialogue.
I just want to say before I yield, you know, one of the things as a board member that's really important to me is that we do not shove students into buildings that make it so their academic program is not what it should be. And that's the history of this district, to be honest. We do that, not intentionally, not to be harmful, but we kind of do that. We have space, we move programs. We, you know, in the past have, you know, wanted to move kids and put people in buildings that don't fit, and that includes adults, right? And so I think part of having the ed specs and really talking about that is that we are being more strategic and more, you know, mindful about what it is that our academic program needs. And even though this, again, the State House is doing this to us, and it's really impeding our ability to plan with our community's own resources to provide the best education that we think we can for our students because they're putting these arbitrary rules around us, there may be instances where we are going to lose property because we aren't ready on the academic side, because it takes time to do what we're doing with ed specs and to create the plans. And so I would just say we need to be very open and communicative with our community. So just like we said about Marion Franklin, I have never said that before. I never wanted to put merge. It was never a merge in my mind. It was a new identity for that south end. But in that case, as the superintendent said, if we lose that huge piece of property, we can't do what we need to do for our vision. So Southside, there may be a merge, and that's not what we want. So we have to talk about that, and we need to go to those communities, and that could happen faster than we anticipate. So I would just very much encourage us to say it out loud, as we are now, but making sure that those communities hear us. And we might need to go into those communities, we will need to go into those communities and have this very intentional dialogue with them so that they understand. And just one last reminder to the board. Now that we have closed these 3 schools that are in gray, we do have 1 year from the closure to figure out what we're doing with the land. So our time clock has started.
Thank you. Board Member Simmons.
Thank you, President Dr. Miranda. Dr. Brown, could you just, I don't quite understand what will happen to Buckeye and that school community come 2028. Could you, barring any additional board action or changes to the state law, come 2028, what will happen to Buckeye?
Buckeye, again, would move to South High School.
All of the middle school students at Buckeye will be assigned to South
High School,
7.
as would all 6th grade students from the South community.
Okay.
South High School would become the middle school for the south side of the city. And Marion Franklin, that site would become the site for the South Side High School.
So that also means the 9 through 12 grade students enrolled at South High School, what would begin school year 2028, they will be, or the 9 through 11, 9 through 12, they will be assigned to
the Marion Franklin site.
Okay.
And again, to Board Member Adair's point, I think it would be important as we're going through that process to begin. I know that there's been thought about academic programming, the movement of academic programming, and which of the facilities is actually better able to accommodate academic programming. That is in the background of this. we've had a committee that was not only working on trying to think about what it would mean to, and actually work through the whole consolidation process for these 3 buildings, but has also been looking forward and thinking about what aligns to what we're trying to do academically as well. But yes, all students on the south side of the city would be attending high school at the current Marion Franklin site, though it would probably make some sense to start thinking about mascot, naming, branding, et cetera, so as not to disenfranchise one community or the other, but to begin to have that forward thought about what that means for a new South
Well,
Side.
and you know what ultimately hurts is not, you know, because the adults of the community or the graduates are upset their school's no longer there. It's when our kids are in buildings and they're not getting the services they need. And, you know, I remember when I first started on the board, I met with Dr. Chapman. I told her, I said, I would really love for us to get under 100 facilities. We had 112 unique school communities and 112 academic facilities. And, you know, here we are on our way to getting down to 104 facilities, but we're still going to have 108 unique academic programs. And so to put 108 unique academic programs in 104 unique facilities, you know, the math there just doesn't work. And so I think for the board to, you know, we've gotten to the point where we've ordered the building closed, but not the program. And ultimately, the challenge that we're facing here, regardless of what happens with the legislature, is Columbus City Schools has too many unique school buildings. We have too much staff, too many dollars, and too few students spread to too many buildings throughout our district. And that continues to be a really core obstacle to all of our students in the district. It's something that I felt throughout my time as a student here. And so, you know, I am happy that we have those 3 facilities taken offline, because those kids are going to be in more modern facilities with more supports and more services that meet their needs. And I want to know how we can take the next 3 offline. And so I think because that's ultimately is going to deliver our students what they need. We can't continue to operate like this. Atlanta City Schools has more students than us, thousands more students than us, maybe even 10,000 more students than us. They've got 40 less buildings, you know? So this model that we're running, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for our kids. It doesn't work for our staff. It doesn't work for our community. It doesn't work for our taxpayers. And the question is not, will SB 331 be law? It's, will SB 331 be law by the end of this biennium? Will it be passed into law and signed into law during the lame duck or not? And so the question for this board is not, what do we do if SB 331 becomes law? It's, what do we want to do now about it? What do we actually want to do right now in this moment, this year, with our facilities to prepare ourselves for when this bill becomes law? It's introduced by the chair of the Senate Education Committee. It's gone through committee. It's been passed out of Senate committee. It's been passed out of the Senate chamber. It's going to go to a House committee. It's going to get passed out of House. It's going to get passed out of the chamber, and it will be signed into law by either this governor or the next governor. And so we need to make real decisions about our facilities that aren't, what do we do with our buildings 2-3 years from now? It's, how can we continue to, you know, if we're not able to move the Duxbury and Everett programs currently, we need to consider other facilities to take offline, because the fact is we have too many schools. That hasn't changed. That hasn't changed from last year. That hasn't changed till today. And so I think, you know, we have some really big decisions in front of us, and this is my uncomfortableness with the current facility strategy we're embarked on, is it essentially pushes all the decisions till a year from now. And
Okay,
because—
Board Member
I have
Simmons,
10
I think we get the point.
Well, we're supposed to have 10 minutes on each agenda topic per our rules, and I'm not sure we do, because we have, you know, I'm not sure the board does get the point, respectfully.
No, I think we
because
do get the
continue
point, and
to
I
have—
think Senate Bill 311 will
We're
force
waiting for
us.
my 10 minutes.
We've talked about this, and sometimes you have to have a crisis to make things happen. We don't know if it'll come out of the House, but even if it doesn't, it could get into the budget bill and slipped in there. And since Governor DeWine is still the governor, he can sign off on it. So I think the Katzenmeyer's committee and your committee will start to look at this. There is urgency now, and so we will have to make hard decisions. So we've understood that we have too many buildings. We have kicked the can down the road, without a doubt, and we can no longer kick it down the road, so we will be making decisions. So the summer will be pretty busy for you. I hope you're not going on vacation. No, I'm just kidding. Any other questions?
Yes, I did not conclude my comments. Thank you. I think, about the facilities is that really means, it means bringing back more buildings for closures this year. It means we have 7105 colleagues. Where's the new policy? My colleagues have told me for a long time now, multiple colleagues, they want a new policy. We have to actually have that drafted so we can do the school closure process again. But it means we're going to have to close more buildings. It means we're going to have to get a building under construction this year, because if we're not ready to go by next springish, we're not going to be eligible for state money. And so it means taking a step back and realizing that if we decide we're not going to do any facility decisions for another year, we're going to be left flat-footed when this becomes law. And I think the question really is not when will this become law, it's when will this become law? This biennium, this lame duck, or next biennium in the budget bill, as you indicated. Okay. And so for us as a board to continue to ignore our facility problems, and we've got to get a building under construction, guys.
Mr. Simmons.
We have to. And we have to
Mr. Simmons,
consider more
we have a lot
closures.
more on the agenda.
Thank you.
We get the point. We will work on that. I think
It's
the
gotta
board
happen
does
this year.
understand the urgency of this.
This year.
Okay, Board Member Dr. Pierce.
Thank you so much, President Miranda. I would just like to speak to the fact that our Academic and Facilities Committee has discussed our policy 7105, and our chair has made a very, I think, valid concern that we need additional meetings with our administration and our district team to determine if the said changes that have come from policy and governance will impact their work moving forward. And so it is the goal of myself to reach out to organize those internal meetings with our team. So I just wanted to make my colleagues aware that as it relates to 7105, we are going to bring that back to our team internally and discuss the said changes and proposals that have come from policy and governance.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. All right, if there are no other questions, we'll leave you alone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, and thank you to all of our community members, families, and parents that have participated in our boundary process engagement activities related to the current schools that the board has voted on. And we want to name and recognize that a lot was discussed in this meeting tonight. We will make sure that we're providing updates to all of the impacted communities and discussing this work publicly, discussing this work in our board committee meetings, and also dialogue with the neighborhood schools and the impacted schools and communities that will require some change or transition. So more to come, but we certainly will continue to provide updates on where we are in the process and recognize that there is a lot more work to be done. And we also want to recognize that we are under a tremendous amount of pressure from the state legislature. My colleague, Ryan Cook, shared a lot of those financial pressures yesterday at our meeting that we had with City Council. Tonight, we are talking about other legislative pressures that are requiring us to make swift, fast decisions that are not necessarily on the timeline that we would want, that would allow for intentional planning and strategic planning for the programming. But we also want to be mindful of the assets and resources that we have, and we don't want to lose them altogether, which would not give us any agency, ownership, or authority over property, some of which are buildings that our community has already invested in through previous FMP projects. And so we want to be mindful of that and certainly keep this top of mind for everyone and continue the dialogue.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. All right, moving on. Mr. O'Connor, do you have a report for us this evening?
I don't have a report this evening.
Okay. Mr. Cook, do you have a report for us this evening?
No report this evening.
Okay. All right. Notice of public hearing on the reemployment of retired employees. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 3309.345, the Columbus Board of Education gives notice that Kitty Carr, teacher, who retired from the Columbus City Schools effective May 29, 2026, is seeking employment with the Columbus City Schools as a teacher effective August 17, 2026. The board will hold a public hearing on August 4th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom at 3700 South High Street, Columbus, Ohio, on the issue of Ms. Carr's reemployment. Pursuant 8.2, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code 3309.345, the Columbus Board of Education gives notice that Carla Scott, teacher who retired from the Columbus City Schools effective May 29, 2026, is seeking employment with the Columbus City Schools as a teacher effective August 17, 2026. The board will hold a public hearing on August 4, 2026 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom at 3700 South High Street, Columbus, Ohio, on the issue of Ms. Scott reemployment. 8.3, notice of public hearing on the reemployment of retired employee Michael Flushy pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 3309.345. The Columbus Board of Education gives notice that Michael Flushy, teacher who retired from the Columbus City Schools effective May 29, 2026, is seeking employment with the Columbus City Schools as teacher effective August 17, 2026. The board will hold a public hearing on August 4th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom at 3700 South High Street, Columbus, Ohio, on the issue of Mr. Flushy reemployment. And 8.4, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 3309.345, the Columbus Board of Education gives notice that Teresa Bombrese, teacher who retired from the Columbus City Schools effective May 29, 2026, is seeking employment with the Columbus City Schools as a teacher effective August 17, 2026. The board will hold a public hearing on August 4th, 2026 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom at 3700 South High Street, Columbus, Ohio, on the issue of Teresa Bombre's reemployment. We will move to the vote on the consent agenda. We are going to consider our consent agenda. Our consent agenda consists of items 9.1 to 24.6. Are there any items a member would like to have removed and voted on individually from the consent agenda? Board Member Dr. Pierce?
Not necessarily to vote on it separately, but I do have an amendment for item 11.2. 11.2, resolution for the adoption of a plan for completion of makeup days via online learning.
If it's, point of order, President Miranda, if it's an amendment, the consent agenda is meant to be a yes or no, up or down vote. That's it, no amendments, no changes. So if there is an amendment for a resolution, we just need to pull it out and put it on the end.
So do you wish to pull it out?
Yes, I wish to pull it out.
All right.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any discussion? If not,
Ms. Adair?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Vice President Ingles?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
President Miranda?
yes.
Motion carried.
Now the consent agenda, that was the motion.
We're on the consent.
Pull it out.
Yes, correct.
That'll be 25.4.
We're back to consent.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I'm sorry, who was the second?
Me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're going to pull these out separately?
No,
Just 11.2.
11.2.
Oh, 11.2.
Yes,
Okay.
25.4.
Correct.
Yep.
Correct, okay.
Do you have an amendment?
No, it's.
Well, but now we're on the regular.
We just need to vote on the consent.
agenda. We're voting on the consent.
Correct.
Yes, just
Yes.
the regular.
Motion second. Let me call the roll. Dr. Pierce?
With the exception of 18.1, 18.2, 18.3, 18.4, 18.5, 18.6, 25.1, 14.1, 14.3, 15.1, 16.1, 16.2, 16.4, 16.5, 20.1, 20.2, and 22.7. Yes, those items are a no from me.
Mr. Katzenmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Would you come back to me, please?
Yes. Ms. Adair?
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Vice President Ingles?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Motion carried. I've got them noted.
Yes. Board Member Dr. Pierce.
I would just like to encourage my colleagues to give thought and consideration to how we are handling our single source contracts. If we are looking and making hard decisions and cuts as it relates to our schools, our budgets, when it comes to these single source contracts, we also need to do the same. And so I look forward to additional conversation and discussion around not only how we're advancing our LEDE process through our contracts, but also how are we making sure that we're following our board policies as it relates to single sourcing.
All right. We're going to consider our legislation agenda 25.1 to 25.3. Is there a motion for 25.1?
So moved.
Second.
No discussion. Call the roll.
Ms. Adair? Dr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Vice President Ingles?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Again, with the exception of 25.1, which I'm saying no, yes to everything else.
It's just
25.1.
25.1.
Well,
So you're no.
I'm reiterating the number for him.
Mr. Katzenmayer?
Yes.
Mr. Simmons?
Abstain.
President Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Motion carried.
25.2.
I'll make a motion for approval.
Second.
Second.
Is there a second?
I had Dr. Kennedy.
I thought
second.
Dr. Kennedy.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dr. Kennedy. Discussion?
Yeah, thank you. I'm going to actually vote no on this for three reasons. I'm concerned that our representation at the State House, based on a number of detrimental bills that have passed over the last few years, and including Senate Bill 311, that is likely to pass in the lame duck, it sounds like. I'm concerned that our representation has not been effective. I'm concerned that our main person at State House Impact Group, who this is about, was Senator Andrew Brenner's senior legislative aide in both the House and the Senate. Our experience and legislative knowledge are why they've been chosen. Those are great reasons to choose a lobbyist, but this also means that as Senator Brenner's senior legislative aide, she was helping to draft many of the bills that have decimated public schools, and I just can't get past going back to the people that were attacking public schools to go to them to now protect us. I feel like we got to have some respect for ourselves. The third is Senator Brenner lost his primary, which means kind of the main connection that we had at State House Impact Group won't be there much longer. So even the good side of the bad isn't that good anymore. So kind of ineffectiveness, the fact that they worked for Andrew Brenner, and the fact that Brenner is leaving. For those reasons, I'm going to be a no on this.
Thank you. Board Member Dr. Pierce.
I appreciate my colleague, Board Member Katzenmayer, for bringing this to the table to discuss. I agree with many of his points. Again, when we are making such tough choices as it regards our budget, we need to be mindful with how we're spending it, and so I as well will be voting no.
Yes. Board Member Adair.
Yes. I also have reservations about this one because the individual who is now leading this effort was not the original person that was hired. That person left for another position in Washington, D.C. We also made internal changes. We no longer have a government affairs person who is really leading this work. So I am concerned that we are also losing, to the point of Board Member Katzenmayer, kind of understanding on what this contractor is doing. So I have huge reservations about this. I do think we need help, and I do think we need a lobbyist. But I am concerned because I don't think we rebid this, did we? This is an extension of the contract that we hired that was somebody else's. So I also will be a no on this.
Board Member Simmons.
Thank you, President. Dr. Miranda. Colleagues, not only did we not bid this out, but I do believe the explanation on the single source exemption is the exact same as the previous year. And when our internal auditor identified that the exemption paperwork was from a previous contract, a new one was uploaded, but the explanation is the same. And it has been a challenge to get consistent single sole source explanations. But I will be voting no today. And with that, I'd like to make a motion to table this indefinitely. If the board wants to bring it back at a later date, I think that would be appropriate. But this legislation does not have today to be approved, and so I'd like to make a motion to table.
Can we just vote no? Why are we tabling?
Well, we can move forward with the vote, but then that would mean the legislation could only be brought back by a member of the prevailing side. I am concerned because our staff have identified that due to potential conflicts, it would be difficult to identify an additional lobbyist. And I do believe one of our colleagues intends to abstain from this legislation, which is why it's under other. And this, because of the type of contract awarded is, I do believe that requires a supermajority of the board. And it doesn't appear that is present today.
I guess I still have the same reservation because I do think it can be brought back by a staff member and we don't necessarily have to table it.
What we've reached the consensus in the past is that if the board votes down legislation, that legislation may only be brought back forth by a member of the prevailing side. If you remember, Dr. Pierce, last year you voted down and I abstained some committee, and I think Ramona wasn't here, and I abstained on some committee, the 1 to 3 policy language, and we had to bring that back, and you were actually the one to make the motion to reconsider. A member of the prevailing side must make the motion to reconsider, and so tabling it would just allow it to come back at a later date, and the board could still reject it at a later date, but the legislations, it doesn't appear it will pass today.
Next meeting.
I do believe that Board Member Simmons is correct for this particular vendor. And so based on the feedback from the board, we can certainly do an RFP for this work. We all know and agree that this is work that is needed. We need extra support in this area to advocate on behalf of our students, our staff, our families at the State House. The State House is very busy, and this legislature is very busy in working to provide more barriers and burdens on public school districts across the state. An RFP, just want to name that, when we put out that RFP and bid, it is my understanding that even if State House Impact Group was the group or that was selected, there would be specific rules that would apply for bringing it back to the table, even if we did the RFP.
Gotcha.
And so I'm just naming that we will certainly do our due diligence on this particular item, but we do want to give consideration for how we either move forward with it, take it off the agenda, and so forth, so that it will allow for the next steps as we move forward.
So that informs my question then for my colleague, Board Member Katzenmeier then. So if we table it, the State House group can come back under an RFP with a proposal, but because we've tabled it, they could be considered. If we vote no and they come back for a proposal, they couldn't be considered?
With an RFP, they could still be considered, is my understanding.
No, what we're talking about legislation, not the specific legislation to award the contract, not the actual, we can do a new contract process and they can be the winner of that new contract process. And then that would just be new legislation. But for this legislation that's resulted out of this selection process, that's different.
So as I'm understanding it, I'm still okay with a no vote, not tabling it, but colleague Katzenmeier, what are your insights and thoughts at this point?
I appreciate that. I think that's right. I mean, I want whatever gives the administration the most flexibility to figure this out moving forward. It sounds like that's a no.
Okay. Is it a no or is it's a tabling? It's a tabling.
Board Member Simmons is correct. There is a motion on the floor. It's not been seconded. No, it has not.
But I think
to table it indefinitely was the motion, I believe.
Which one?
Well, which one gives you the most flexibility, ability to do this again? Is that a no or a table?
I think it's tabling it.
It's tabling it.
Just table.
Yes, to move
Okay.
forward with the motion to table this
Correct.
legislation.
Indefinitely.
So we'll bring it back
Correct.
at another time once we've done an RFP, and it may be this organization or maybe another organization, but it would allow us the opportunity.
So now we are at the motion
Second.
to table versus the motion for no.
There's a motion to table it indefinitely on the table, correct?
Second.
So there's a motion to table it. Okay.
And
call
a
the
second, yes. Vice President Ingles,
Abstain.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Motion to table passed.
Thank you for that discussion. 25.3,
Motion to approve item 25.3.
Second.
there's no discussion, call the roll.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Vice President Ingles,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda.
Abstain.
Motion carried.
All right. 25.4,
Which was prior.
So colleagues, with the drafted policy that's currently uploaded in board docs, when we ask questions of our administration, policy 2370.01 was shared with us, where I would like us to have consistency between the drafted policy and our current existing policy of 2370.01 is the tracking of hours. So I motion that this drafted policy 25.4 include a sentence that states the superintendent will collect, report, and track program data annually in accordance with data reporting guidelines and provide regular reports to the board. That's the motion.
I'm sorry.
Can you repeat that? I'm
Can
sorry.
you tell us where you are?
Yeah, so.
Sorry.
So the drafted policy that we have, 25.4,
11.
Which originally was
which was
11.2.
originally 11.2.
Okay.
So the makeup plan for instructional hours,
Okay.
right? There was no mention of tracking of hours. And when we posed the question to administration, they uploaded 2370.1. And if you compare the two, my motion would be that the superintendent collects and tracks attendance and data. So the motion is thus to include the second to last sentence from 2370.01, which is the superintendent will collect, report, and track data annually in accordance with data reporting guidelines and provide regular reports to the board. I took program out of that language because this isn't a program, it's closures due to events that we have no control over.
Okay. I will
Does that make
second your
sense?
motion.
does everybody know?
Are you putting it here?
Yeah,
Where
we're
did you-
putting it at the bottom.
Okay.
But this is, click and go into that plan. That.
Oh, in the attachment. Okay, you're not changing you're changing the agreement.
The agreement and can legal counsel help? So it would be a changing, or Dr. Klein, one of the two. It would be a change of the agreement language as well as the resolution language to add that line in, both? Dr. Klein, can you help? Is that okay, Dr. Chapman, and Dr. Klein come up and assist?
Dr. Klein?
I'm not opposed to the change. I just wonder because now there's changes to this agreement if, because CEA is a signatory on this, if they would need to review this or not. Yes, I'm seeing nods, but I don't think Mr. Caniglio is here anymore.
Dr. Klein?
Yes, President Dr. Miranda, Vice President Ingles, members of the Board of Education, Treasurer Cook, and Auditor O'Connor. It is necessary to discontinue our current blended learning declaration, not our policy, our declaration that we filed with the Ohio Department of Education, who is now titled the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce, in 2021 due to COVID. We are recommending to file a makeup day via online learning plan with ODEW prior to August 1st. This would give us up to 3 school days if needed due to hazardous weather conditions, law enforcement emergencies, damage to the school, etc. The current Board of Education policy 2370.01 regarding blending learning would be reviewed by a committee next school year to determine future recommendations for the Board of Education's consideration. Please note that if these makeup days are needed, which previously were titled Blizzard bags, these plans would be posted on our learning management system, district website, and students would have up to 2 weeks to complete the assignments. This filing must be submitted no later than August 1st to the Ohio Department of Education and Workforce and have written CEA support.
And thank you, Dr. Klein. And Board Member Adair, you asked a question about making sure that we are following all of our labor contracts. We'll make sure that once this is approved, and if we have to activate it, we will make sure that we will connect with and plan with our labor partners as a part of execution. So this is a contingency plan. If in the event we have a significant number of snow days, inclement weather days, we have to close because of electricity or any type of weather events or any reason, it gives us a cushion to move to activate this blended learning plan for up to 3 days. So that would be planned, it would be intentional, and we would engage with our labor partners to ensure that we are honoring all of our negotiated agreements as a part of executing on this contingency plan.
And also, legal also shared that we're not making the change to the resolution, we're making a change to the draft, the attachment, which was 11.2, this thing that says draft, to include the sentence of tracking the data.
Yeah, my question was, I don't have a problem with the change. My question was, though, I just don't know in the process, is because this is a draft and it has Mr. Coniglio's name on it, if he reviewed this draft and said it was okay for us to review, or if it's what you just said, it would just be something that's the contingency plan. I just didn't know if he needed to know about this addition, because it sounds like we actually need to do this today.
We absolutely need to do this today for next school year. And we have, again, I know that John Dean can provide context to the conversations that he had earlier today with our labor leaders.
And because we rescinded the previous plan until we adopt that before we leave tonight, we actually don't have a blended learning plan because the rescission is as effective, but the adoption has not happened yet.
That is not correct based upon the conversations that I had earlier with legal and Dr. Klein. Am I correct in that?
No.
Thank you.
Okay.
We rescinded the declaration for blended learning as a result of COVID-19, but our policy 2370.01 remains standing. Am I correct in understanding that?
Yes. Remains standing. Okay. That's why.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce.
Come back to the microphone, Dr. Klein, so everyone can hear you.
Thank you. And Board Member Simmons, to your question, in my remarks, I mentioned that we would be reviewing that policy to recommend to the Board of Education any changes to that during next school year.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yes.
So the agreement that was attached to this agenda item has been reviewed with CEA, and Mr. Coniglio has indicated support of it. If we make an amendment to this agreement, I would have to go back to him to make sure that it is acceptable, but I have no problem doing that.
And to be clear, if it's unacceptable, the added language, we do have an additional board meeting. We could handle this in before the August 1st deadline.
Yes.
Yes,
So
that's correct.
we would be okay.
Okay.
Next Monday.
So it's been first, is second. We've had our discussion. Mr. Cook.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Vice President Ingalls,
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
President Miranda.
Yes.
Thank you so much, colleagues, for that. And while we are thinking about instruction, attendance, and hours, I also would like to request that we have a conversation about the potential hours that our students that are attending, and Dr. Klein, I hope I'm getting this correctly, that are attending like our K through 8 schools, and how they are potentially losing valuable instruction hours because of the structure of that day. And so if
6 through 8.
Our middle school students who are in those K through 8 buildings are losing valuable instruction time because they are pretty much on an elementary calendar schedule. And so if we could allot some discussion time and probably academic facility and alignment committee to kind of discuss that, especially given the discussion that we've had around our realignment plan, I think it would be really fruitful.
I think that's a really good point because we've kind of said we want to go back to traditional grade bands, but we haven't really said that. Like as a board, we haven't like said that. So I think it's a very good point, Dr. Pierce.
We now need a motion and second for the amendment.
Motion
the amended
to-
version.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, you don't need a motion and second, you just need to vote on
Vote on it. Yeah.
Well, it was actually never motion. We
It
took
was-
a subsidiary motion before we took a main motion.
Correct.
We did, yeah. So
Correct.
motion to approve.
Thank you.
The resolution for the adoption of a plan for completion of makeup days via online learning.
Second.
Thank you.
Okay, call the roll.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Vice President Ingalls,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer,
Yes.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. All right. The chair now recognizes Board Member Sarah Ingalls for a motion.
I motion that the Board of Education move into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1 to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual, unless the public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual requests a public hearing, and G4, preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Second.
Thank you. Please call the roll.
Mr. Simmons,
Yes.
Ms. Adair,
Yes.
Dr. Kennedy,
Yes.
Vice President Ingalls,
Yes.
Dr. Pierce,
Yes.
Mr. Katzenmayer,
Yes.
President Dr. Miranda.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Please note that the board will adjourn following our executive session this evening and will not be reconvening in this room.